Pandora's Box is about to open wide.
Welcome to Pandora's Box again, everybody. Thanks for tuning with us this evening. We got a special guest in the studio this evening, a lady that we've all known for a long time. She goes by many aliases in our world and the next, but I refer to her as the Little Chief, Clare Stone.
Hello.
Hello, Claire. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Welcome.
Yeah, lady of many names. The Clack Attack.
Clackers.
Yep.
Clackers. I said many aliases, but obviously you are Josh's, our good friend Josh's partner. Long-time partner. When did you and Josh get together? Like 2010, 2011?
2010.
2010.
Wow.
So that's a long time now I've been putting up with that quaver.
Yes.
That cheesy quaver, you know?
Nearly 13 years.
Yeah, so like, how old was Bullwinkle then?
7.
Yeah, so...
7 years
7
old.
years old.
So you're basically family.
Yeah.
You know, basically like a sister to this young lad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 7 years
Where would he
old.
be without you? Yeah, but your profession is. Well, explain your profession is because I don't want to mess it up.
It's just a bit of a mix, really. So I'm classed as like a psychic medium. So I would say psychic medium, tarot reader, clairvoyant, all of the above.
Yeah.
Really. So yeah.
But as people that regularly listen to Pandora's Box know, we're all sort of very interested in like the supernatural, the paranormal, and as I'm sure like Josh might have even said to you, Claire, like all my life I've been really into that.
Yeah.
So like, when we were like little kids, even when we were like in primary school, I'd be like sitting reading books about like the supernatural and stuff.
Yeah.
Like if we were like in school, you would like be asked to bring in a book. Other people would be bringing in like I don't know whatever. And I'd be sitting there reading a book on like cryptids. I'd be reading a book on like monsters and stuff like that. And I remember like Mrs. Robinson and stuff. Our teacher would always be a bit like giving a bit of a weird like he's an odd lad. He is. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone else is just like reading like the first Harry Potter book that's just come out. And I'd be there reading like these really weird like old books on like monsters and like poltergeists
and like you said, you've always been excited by fear almost, or like
but
you know, like I remember when we were younger and I was like a little wet job,
get your
like
whip out.
like being around your house and you and Josh really wanting to like walk through the graveyard and me being like, no.
Oh yeah, like getting an adrenaline rush of like it's almost like that feeling I guess of like like the unknown partly. And also like the feeling of like I guess what could possibly happen, like things like that, you know. Get
the mystery,
get your blood going. Yeah, but we've talked a lot in the past, you know. It's like I don't know, like because the thing is, I guess that could be like to my detriment. Obviously, that's one of the cool things that we'll talk to you about today. Because obviously, it'd be really cool to get your feedback on that, like what you think about that sort of thing. But I think to make it like really interesting and to sort of tell like a nice clear story. I thought it'd be fun to almost like take it back to sort of like when you were younger. Because obviously, let's face it, you have a very fascinating profession because it's not like you make bread in Morrison's. Do you know what I mean? It's like, without being rude to any, like, only on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, nothing against bakers in Morrison's, but it's like not particularly interesting to ask someone like too much in depth about that profession. But you have like a very extremely intriguing job.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? But it's one that very much like Liam Neeson in Taken requires a very certain set of skills.
It does.
and also courage as well, because I remember when you first like had the transition from your job to actually Callum
Right, so hard not to say something.
From working and actually like creating. That's what's always really impressed me as well, like taking that leap of faith to start your own business and everything and become fully self-sufficient. So yeah, I'd like to hear on that stuff.
Didn't you
really
used to work for
cool.
the council?
Yes, I did.
So what did you do there?
I can only tell you so much about that.
Yeah.
So I used to work for
Liam
social
Neeson.
services. So that's what I did. So I used to recruit adopters and foster carers. So I did the admin and PA'd for social workers.
That's a good job to do, isn't it?
Yeah. So
Very
and a lot
decent.
of psychics and mediums actually do things like that sometimes before. So they'll do like caring professions. So they'll be in care or work for social services or work with people that like need help. Like, but I didn't do it intentionally. I was like, that looks like a good job. I'll just do it.
Like
and I
a
did it
natural
for
call
years,
towards people and helping people and stuff.
Even though I
That's
didn't,
interesting.
really, I'm like quite shy when I started. I didn't really want to do that. But I thought, oh no, it's like a good pay job. And then I found it really, really interesting because you have to investigate and stuff like that.
I'm a private investigator.
Yeah. So
Clare
you have
Stone,
to
private investigator.
do checks on people and
Little
stuff
card.
like that. Yeah. So you have to do
nice.
checks on people and stuff. So I thought,
Spread 'em.
that's really, So it's
Again,
that's the
Liam
cool
Neeson.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
It is actually, It's a bit
Yeah,
like that.
that is quite cool. That is quite cool.
So some of it, like, I can't talk about because it's like
Yeah, of
I had to
course.
sign off something that, you know, but yeah, it
NDAs.
was, a really interesting job. And then the psychic work just took off too much.
Yeah, sure.
So I was doing both at the same time. So I was doing loads in the evening with the psychic work, and weekends I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do both at the same time and have a massive load of court paperwork that I need to send off and think about that, and then go home and see, you know, someone crying because someone's died or whatever. And
Yeah, it's quite a heavy day, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
it's
quite
too
a
heavy.
day. Yeah, fair play.
So I was like, I've got to stop this.
Yeah. So I thought, like, if we took it back, like, right back to when sort of like you were a little kid, because I guess I know that from what I've spoken to you in the past, obviously, I guess with being sort of like naturally being like a clairvoyant and a psychic medium and stuff like that, like, you've always been able to see stuff that like other people can't see.
Yeah.
So I thought what would be really interesting is like take it back to like when you were a little kid. So obviously you were born in North Pedderton, weren't you?
No, I was born in Bridgewater.
Hamp, wasn't it?
No.
Oh.
Bridgewater, Taunton Road, near their new estate. It was
Yeah,
new when it
yeah.
was like created and stuff. So that was where I like grew up. I was born in Taunton, and then obviously, but you know, lived in
pretty much
Bridgewater,
everyone is around here, aren't they?
So
Yeah.
Bridgie. So yeah, I've always been from Bridgewater, and then moved to North Pedderton like when I was a lot older, and then moved back again to Bridgewater, which I'm doing now. So yeah, I would see things from about the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah, so obviously like grew up in a pretty like standard, sort of just like working class family. So when you say you started seeing stuff at like 4 or 5, what was it that you would see, and when did you realise that wasn't normal? Because obviously, like, let's face it, right? Especially when you're a little kid, it takes quite a level of maturity. I don't think until maybe you're in your at least late teens, maybe for most people 20s, that you start to almost like reflect on like what is normal, or like, is my life normal? And obviously then you could, you know, go into a conversation is anything normal? But without sort of branching too much, like, what you know is all you know, isn't it? So to you, I guess at first, I imagine whatever you were seeing you thought was normal.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you saw, and when did you realise that other people couldn't see these things? Like, when did you realise that wasn't quote unquote normal?
Right. So the first things I would see are usually like lights, like orbs, like that type of thing. But they would go around the room, round and round. I think as a chick, you think, oh, it's a bit weird. Then animals.
Oh yeah.
So you'd see animals, like the first thing. But that used to really freak me out. I hated it as a kid.
Can you remember like a specific instance? Like, can you remember like, you know, do you have a memory of like, oh, I was sitting here one day?
Yeah, so I was in bed and a dog jumped on the bed.
Was it?
And I screamed the whole place
Well,
down.
when you were 4 years old.
I couldn't. My memory is so good from back in that time. A lot of people can't remember anything. I remember everything, like really sharply. So yeah, it was the animal on the bed and then screaming. But my family are really into spiritual stuff though. Like, so both sides of my family have always been into the spiritualist church, stuff like that. So when I said about it, they were like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Like, so they never talked to me about it ever. But then,
what exactly is a spiritualist church?
So it's a church.
Was there one in Britain?
Yeah, we've been together.
Yeah, we have.
Was that
we
the one
used to
on
go.
Was that on West Street?
I used to love it. Yeah,
it's,
with Norman.
Yeah, Norman.
I remember Norman.
It's behind Beats.
He used to channel Arthur Conan Coyle.
Yeah.
Arthur Conan Coyle?
Arthur Conan Doyle.
Arthur Conan Doyle, yeah.
The guy that wrote Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, he used to channel him there in front of us all.
Moriarty, you fiend!
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, so I've been with Drew before, but it's like a church, so it's a bit like Christian-y, like not really.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because like,
yeah.
is it? Do they still believe obviously in like Jesus and it's all very Christian? So what makes it spiritualist then?
So
They do
makes it spiritualist is, I always say it's like they believe in the end of the Bible. So, you know,
Revelations.
So it's kind of like, you
Well,
know,
the bit where everything's
where he comes
savage.
back, you know, so where, you know, Jesus dies and he comes back and he's a ghost and then he goes back again, like all of that type of stuff.
Oh.
They
right.
edit bits out. So a lot of Christians don't believe in spirit. So they believe that you go to heaven or hell. That's your lot. They don't come back and talk to you unless it's really serious. Whereas the spiritualist church, they're like, no, they come back and talk to you. Everyone does. And they communicate and give you messages.
I remember being at the spiritualist church, and it was amazing. You would do all kinds of things there. So there'd be like people actually giving readings for people, like standing up on the pew and then like just picking someone and then giving them like a read of someone coming through.
That's pretty cool.
But then they'd also do stuff like where you'd like get in circles and everything.
Do the Macarena.
And there's like table tipping. Have you heard of like table tipping?
The word seemed...
So they literally put like a small table in groups. You'd be in groups of like say 5 or 4 or 5 or 6 all around, and you'd all just kind of put your fingers, the tips of your fingers on the table.
Oh, and raise the table.
Not raise. Well, if something crazy was
It went
going on,
super
you'd
safe.
raise the table.
Yeah.
But the table would start moving, and no one's like It's obviously you doing it, the energies of all the people that are doing it.
Kinetic energy.
But it's like the table will almost like have a mind of its own. And I remember like Sherelle was there once doing it as well. And the table would like start just like hitting against her like real fast. And like stuff like that. So it's almost, do you know what I mean? It's so not actually, I never had an experience there where it actually lifted off the floor, but it would move and then it would almost like hit to a person. You'd say, what's yes and what's no? And it would be like 2 knocks for yes or 1 knock for no. And
so then you'd
ask questions and then it would move and do things.
So the person it would hit would ask a question. Is that right?
Anyone could ask a question.
We did it together, didn't we?
Yeah.
Me and Drew had the table together. So he was on one side, I was on the other, and we had to ask like questions and then it would just start rocking. But yeah, it's like you're in a different zone when you're doing it. It's like you don't feel like you're doing it physically.
Was it like pretty much all of your family you used to go to that?
No, so they would go now and again. So my dad's nan, she was really into the church. She would go like all the time to
Spiritualist church.
Spiritualist church, yeah. I think it's because it's more fun, more activities.
It wasn't like what you think of a normal church. It was cool.
Is it quite common? Could you find like a spiritualist church in most towns, or is it like?
Yeah.
Well, if you can just find one in Bridges.
You can find them in any town, and then they'll do like an evening one maybe on a Tuesday, and then they have the Sunday service. So you'll do like hymns still and things like that on a Sunday, but then at the end they'll do like someone on a podium telling you like they've got spirits coming through and stuff like that. Yeah, so they've always been into that. But I didn't really know that at a young age. Yeah. All I knew is that everyone was getting excited that I was like seeing this stuff.
So you said that. Did you like scream out to your parents?
Yeah.
When you saw this big dog jump on. And then what happened? Did it like when you reacted? Did it then disappear, or was it still there, or what?
It disappeared. The thing is,
Can you remember what it looked like?
Yeah, it was usually just like a black figure, but you could just. It's weird as a psychic as well. So as a medium, you're just seeing it, or you're like kind of seeing the outline or the energy. Well, I was like feeling it inside that it was that. So that's what I do now for readings. Like you feel inside, like I don't really need to look at a picture of you coming through. I can feel it in my head or in my body that it is a dog. So
an intuition.
So when you say it was like a big, do you say big black dog?
Yeah.
So did you...
Big black dog.
Was that like... well, obviously it was scary because you were like a little girl. But in terms of like the energy, because you're saying you can feel the energy, was it like malice or was it benign?
No, it's kind of like benign, really. Like you don't you feel scared because you think it's out of the ordinary a little bit.
But like, you didn't think it was like a bad spirit.
No, it's just like a bit like spooky. So if like someone jumps out on you,
yeah, of course,
it's exactly the same as that. So it's like I don't like that. Yeah.
Did Josh ever tell you about once and I punched him in the face and floored him because he jumped out on me at my house?
No, he hasn't told me that one.
Yeah, he was hiding from me for ages at my parents' house when we were little kids. And I couldn't find him. This is like me and Josh just used to do something like this all the time. This was like the basis of our friendship. And then I walked into my bedroom and he went like rah, and like jumped out from behind the bedroom door. But like my knee-jerk reaction was I just went bang and just like punched him and just like floored him.
That's what it's like.
He was just like on the floor.
That's what it's like. The spirit. That's what I do.
Well, you just punch him.
Yeah, just punch Josh whenever I see one. Yeah. You do get in like defense mode when you see it. Like if it's unexpected. Like when I'm doing readings and stuff, I'm working, and that's why I use the cards to control it a lot of the time. So I'm like, right, we're working now, and then I'm putting the cards where we're not working. So if I'm seeing spirits around, I will get spooked now and again, or be like, oh, like what do you want? Like it's more like that now. It's a bit more casual rather than me jumping around screaming.
It's funny you say that, obviously, about like I was listening to this like psychological. It was going on about the type of psychology it was going on about was basically. It was like almost like boredom, like the psychology of boredom. But then it was like going on about how like anything, regardless of how traumatic something could be, if it happens enough, it will become normal. And they were saying that you could even do tests to this. So like if you saw a bird on a branch, and obviously you went up to the branch and you shook it violently, the bird would fly away. But then if you just stood there shaking the branch for ages, eventually the bird would just come back and it would sit on the branch. And even though it was going up and down, it would just not care anymore.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
it's like you can train yourself to get over fears and stuff.
But that's just it. Just made me think about that anyway. But yeah, so going back to it. So what? So you told your parents that this big dog jumped on your bed, and you, as you said, they almost like got excited.
Yeah.
I guess because they thought like, oh, you've
got
something
going on here. Yeah.
So then how did that evolve? So what happened next?
So then, like through the years, really, I'd started seeing like people or shadows. like
Right.
coming through, or over the bed.
And yet again, can
Usually
you
at
think of
night.
like a specific
One
occasion?
specific one was quite funny.
And how old do you reckon you were?
I reckon I was about 6. This is a scary one.
Yeah, and where were you living at this point?
I was staying at my grandparents actually, because my mum and dad were renovating the new house that they were in. So I was
Right.
staying with my nan and granddad. And the person over the road had their curtains shut, and my nan was like, "Oh, they've gone on holiday." And I was like, "No, she's not." And she's like, "What do you mean she's not gone on holiday?" And I was like, "She's not there anymore." And she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a look." And my granddad was like, "No, don't." And I said, "She's not there. She's dead." As a 6-year-old kid, she looked through the letterbox and she was dead on the floor. The woman. It's like you could feel that energy and that spirit coming through, and when they were like, "Oh my god, what the hell? Like, this is crazy."
That's
and
quite a
then,
crazy thing for a 6-year-old girl to say, isn't it?
yeah, it was like big and it was quick all at the same time. And then after that, I would see things like go across the room, but more specifically, say like one had a case in his hand, like a gun case.
Oh, really?
And I was like, "Oh, that's a bit strange."
Going to
So,
hunt some pheasants?
so yeah, so I told my parents.
So this was in your house?
Yeah, and my grandparents, and my granddad just like went white. And he was like, "Oh my God, that's my auntie's husband, ex-husband." And he tried to kill her. She moved to America in like the 20s or 30s. And he was like this gangster guy. She didn't realize that at the time. And
Yeah.
he tried to kill her and she came back. But it was him, and he had the hat on. He had the gun case. I described him perfectly. And he was just like, "I can't be in this house." Like, it's like
Well, yeah.
crazy.
It's
Like, he's
yeah.
come to visit and say hello. Like, she can connect now. I'm going to tell you what's
So obviously,
what.
I imagine that was like malicious. Then was like
Yeah.
almost like trying to invoke
Yeah.
fear in your family, almost like maybe
Yeah.
it's almost like revenge. Like he never managed to accomplish his task of murking his missus.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, I'm going to come and
following.
I'm going to almost like going to torment her descendants.
Yeah, I'm going to torment the little girl, and then she's going to relay the message and freak them all out, and they're going to think that I'm haunting them or whatever.
Whoa.
And they obviously wasn't, because he went away and he didn't come
So-
back. But
No, go on.
I was just going to say, was it quite an active house? Like, did it
Yeah,
feel like
so,
the
yeah,
energy there was quite
the second house I
crazy?
lived in was the most active house I've ever lived in,
Right.
and that was bad energy. That wasn't good energy. Although if you're a medium, that's quite good to start out with, actually, because then they're all coming through. So if you live in a really quiet, like timid house as a medium, it's more harder to push through. Whereas,
when you say
like,
it's harder
yeah.
to push through, what do you mean?
So it's kind of like, yeah, with kind of wispy, like good spirits. So like, you know, your great grand coming through or whatever. It's good, but they haven't really got like good messages. They won't come through as strong. So they can be quite, you know,
Vague?
white shadow. Yeah, like vague. Whereas in like a house where sometimes the energy's not so great, they come through really strong, like really fast. But that's good to like work your brain into
It's a
seeing
bit
the
like
other
Siths
ones.
and Jedis in Star Wars. It's
Yeah.
like Siths, it's like easier. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like easier to become more powerful or whatever.
Yeah,
Or it's like,
yeah.
or it's like the there's an obvious display of power, whereas Jedi's a bit more subtle.
Yeah.
So is it
That's my
easier
little
to
Star Wars
interpret
analogy.
like a threatening sort
Yeah.
of presence then?
Yeah,
Is
really.
it like an immediate feeling of dread?
Yeah, immediate feeling of dread. Also, they scratch you sometimes as well. So you
I've
still
heard that,
scratches
yeah.
and with that,
Whoa.
try and strangle you.
Yeah, when I
so
went
you'll
to-
sort of
Sorry,
can choke all the time, constantly with a bad spirit as well.
just choking.
Yeah, like you can't breathe, or you feel heavy on the chest. Really bad headaches, stomach aches, like constantly.
You feel it through your own body. If
Yeah.
they're like trying to communicate with you, it'd be like, yeah, your neck closes up. Or not.
Yeah.
This isn't me saying it happens to me, but like you hear that that's a way of.
Yeah, I've heard
you
about like the
interpreting.
scratches and the bruises and like all like feelings of being punched and things like
Yeah,
that.
you
or
do. I
kicked.
get that in readings, like a normal reading. I would do like. If I do one tomorrow, one
Yeah.
of them will pinch my arm, probably pinch,
Whoa.
pinch, or feel physical, or punch in the arm.
Do you ever
so,
have
yeah.
actually like physical like wounds?
Yeah,
Yeah?
you do. Yeah, so with the scratching stuff, you'll get like where the hell did that scratch come from?
Josh always like paranoid that he's gonna be called a woman beater.
Or like he always says, "God, where have you got that bruise from?" And like massive bruise in your leg or on your arm. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was so and so I spoke to earlier." But
yeah.
they, sometimes spirits don't do it on purpose. So sometimes they do it just to connect. Like, I need to talk to you. Can you feel me? Can you feel me? And then other spirits, they're like really, really bad and they won't let go.
So is it almost like for them, it's quite like an endeavor to like come back to like communicate with somebody in this world? So
Yeah.
I guess they're like
Desperate.
they're
Yeah,
desperate and they're like
yeah.
grasping almost.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like quite a struggle.
And
for
then
them.
the other ones, they won't be grasping. They'll just be like casual in the corner. I'm like, "You're gonna give me some more?" Like it's like, you know, you can't get enough from them. So
Where's the
yeah.
juicy stuff?
Yeah, like, yeah. Like so, some clients you see and stuff, you think, "Oh, for God's sake, like this is like a bit boring. Like they're not giving me anything that's any good. It's just they're just walking in and out, talking about the weather, like in your head when they talk, and that's it." And then other ones, they're like grasping at you, like trying to tell you stuff, getting excited, flashing the lights. banging the door.
So does that happen sometimes at
Yeah.
your house? The lights flash?
Yeah, sometimes the lights will flash or the TV will come on. I did that for a video call once for someone. She had the TV in the back completely off and it just came on.
I remember
Yeah.
just on the subject of the lights before I forget, because I did think it was like pretty I say it could have been a coincidence, but I did think it was like pretty funny, like in like a creepy way at the time. But pretty much everybody in Emily, my missus' family, have like had a weird experience in Emily's mum's house. And I've like said, you know, they've seen in the corner of their eye like what seems like an elderly man, and seen things move in the kitchen and other things. And it's funny because one day I was just thinking about it while I was in the bathroom at Emily's mum's house, and I wasn't talking to myself out loud. I was thinking it. Oh no, I was thinking it in my head, like about all the stuff that I've heard that happened. And then I was washing my hands, and then I sort of like looked up to look at myself in the mirror, and then I said out loud, like, yeah,
Candyman.
no, I said, yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, yeah, right, because they told me some really crazy stuff had happened. Like,
Yeah, right.
well, you know, like just almost, I guess, because I'd never experienced anything like, you know, as you guys know, I'm super like, I'm very, very open-minded, but I've almost always been like in search of stuff, but never been able to find something. Not anything that
Any solid evidence.
Not any like I've had weird stuff happen to me, but I've had stuff that you could in
Could
theory
be easily dismissed.
Well, not easily dismissed, but you could in theory explain.
Right.
Like science could explain it. So yeah, I looked at myself, and because you know they've like said before that literally like they would just be standing in the kitchen, and suddenly like there would be like a plate and some cups on the side, and then it would literally just go onto the floor and smash. So I was thought that's quite radical. So I was thinking, you know, I said, and this, you know, don't want to say this to be like rude to anybody or like patronizing, but I'd almost think like, well, you know, because I remember one of the times they said it happened, it was like late at night on Christmas, and I was thinking, well, they were probably all drunk or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And you know, sometimes, you know, like memories are a tricky thing. But anyway, I looked up and I was washing my hands. I looked up and went, yeah, right, because I thought some of these things were like, you know, something you see in a movie, not like so. And then when that happened, the lights went.
Yeah, don't ever do that.
And the lights like flashed about like 5 times, and I was like, and I remember thinking like, that might have been a coincidence, but that was really weird timing because it was like. It wasn't even like a second after I said it. It was like it happened like the moment I stopped. Like
a communication.
Yeah, that's what they do. Like I get that a lot. Like sometimes people that don't believe and go, "Oh yeah, right," like you know, laugh in your face. I'm like, you're gonna regret saying that. And then all of a sudden, like they've crashed their car, or like something's happened, lights have flickered, or something's blown up in the house. And I'm like, they try and make you believe a lot of the times. It's like, I don't need to prove anything; they'll prove it to you. Like it can be like that sometimes. So.
Yeah, as I said, it's not even like I wanted to be like rude or anything about it. But I guess it's like, to me, and I'm sure you're the same because of the job you do. I imagine you're weary of people that it's a bit like believing in UFOs. It's like you got the people that, unfortunately, believing in UFOs, you could be perceived as being a quack, like if you said it, because there are all the freaking weirdos with tinfoil hats going like, I have been contacted by the people of Xanadu. And then, you know, it's like you see like, you know, there's like a really good Louis Theroux documentary and he like went to Nevada. And it's like, most of those people are nuts, man. So it's like, whatever you're into, there's going to be those sort of people. And unfortunately, that ruins it a little bit and taints it, doesn't it? And obviously, that's a lot of that goes on, obviously, with anything that's paranormal or supernatural. Yeah. You know, you've got like, even like cryptids and stuff, the amount of like fake Loch Ness sightings, and it turns out it's like someone bought a dinosaur toy and then took like a close-up picture of like a diplodocus that they've put in like the shallows and then just took an up-close picture of it, and then it goes like viral for like a while, and then people realize like, oh, it was like a toy that was bought in like Smith's. Do you know what I mean? So it's like things like this happen all the time. Like people will buy like gorilla suits and then try and like do like a Bigfoot hoax. It just happens though, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, you get it all the time, especially with my job. Like you see, it makes you really angry, and I have to try and stop myself from getting angry with it because there's a lot of people out there like, I don't believe in that because they're all rubbish. But then you do see some mediums and that, and you think, yeah, to be fair, they don't look great or professional, and it does like taint other people that are amazing and really good psychics and really good mediums that are serious about it. Yeah, like I always call myself more of a realistic medium. Yeah, like I don't do like all this like kind of airy fairy stuff, and you know, oh, let's sit and meditate for like an hour before we do the reading. You've either got it or you haven't got it. You get on with it. Like I'm not gonna be into like running around doing like weird stuff. Yeah, like
running around doing weird stuff.
That's what people that's what people do. Like they'll
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
you know, put like sage around everywhere, and
I know what you mean. It's like that almost like
makes
annoying.
it stupid, and
Yeah.
it's not. It's more serious than that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's almost like the same problem I have a little bit with Glastonbury. It's not like I actually have anything like I guess like people that are genuinely like spiritual and like actually genuinely into maybe a more like magical side of life and like mythology and all of that stuff. Like I actually really like that. And when you come across like genuine people that are like that, I feel like I really enjoyed speaking to them, and I feel like I have an in-depth really in-depth conversations with them. But what I'm wary of a little bit, especially as I feel like it's become a little bit trendy in like the last 10 years or so, is you see that it's you get a lot of people that are almost like maybe like fake, essentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do,
and they're in it almost like in it for the image of it, or maybe it's almost just like an excuse to walk around smoking weed all day in a hemp hoodie, but it's like, look how spiritual I am. I'm like, no, it's just you just like getting wrecked all the time, and it's just a good excuse to do it in Glastonbury, because in most places you'll be held more accountable. Like, nah, like you know what I mean? So there's that element of it. So no, it's just like, so I think it's good to have like a healthy level of skepticism with anything.
Well, that's what I'm
know,
like I don't necessarily believe like in aliens and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a spiritual thing going on with that. But I would never...
Well, like interdimensional.
Yeah, but I always take the more serious people that are into it, like, to look into things rather than, like, the random ones that are into it.
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah, it's the same with mediumship. Like, some people just look at the bad stuff or, like, the kooky, weird things and think... oh, that's what they're like. Oh, I'm staying away from that. Whereas actually, just
almost
look
it
at
puts
the
you
more,
off.
look at the more serious ones that do it every day. Like I've been doing it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Every single day. I'm not just randomly at 16.
There's that sincerity.
Going to Glastonbury and you know.
Yeah, but like 10 years ago, you were like
and-
stealing like Alistair lagers.
Yeah.
And like a chav. Like,
That's what it is. Like you do get some people that come in and they're like, oh, love and light, and I'm like, oh. God, they're literally. I've got a group of I've got a group of spirits behind you, laughing your head off. They're head off right now. It's you don't do that. You know, you can be spiritual, but just kind of be sensible with it.
yeah. I guess it's like if people are like hamming it up loads, maybe it comes across as like a bit insincere, and then you're like, okay, it seems like you're doing it for like the image and that, you know.
Yeah.
Have you had many like experiences? Because you go to other psychic mediums and stuff, don't you, as well? Have you had many that you've almost been sat down with and thought, yeah, this is just complete?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Like I don't ever tell them I'm a psychic medium or anything like that, and I don't do it really to test them. I do it just for myself, because sometimes you want a bit of backup to like information you get. You think, I need a second opinion on that. I don't know if that's right or not. Then you go to me like, oh my God, like it makes you sometimes feel good about yourself. But then you see some that are amazing. They're really, really good and like really on the money with it. You don't even need to kind of ask them any questions. They've asked them all already.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and do sometimes in my readings. Like I want to get to the point where you're only asking me 1 or 2 questions. You're not asking me about 10 because I've already answered them for you. So yeah, you do get that. And then you get some psychic mediums that are all like, you know, I'm attached to my massive crystal in the room. I need to meditate for like 15 minutes first. And I'm like, it's just like bravado. It's not real.
Yeah.
You feel like more like they're trying to play a character.
Yeah, they're playing a character, and it's like you don't have to play a character. You've got
that's
it. Or
you.
you haven't
If it's
got it.
you, it's you.
Yeah,
It's not a character.
This is me.
It's not like a wrestling persona.
Yeah, like people are usually shocked actually when they come to visit me because they've been to other psychics. They'll go into other psychic mediums' houses and they've got crystals everywhere. They've got incense burning. They've got the whole shebang going on. Whereas they come into mine, very plain, white table. It's just the cards on the table. I'll have some candles on. That is it. I don't have any symbolisms on the walls, like nothing. It's very, very bare. Because you don't need all that to show that you're a psychic. You're a psychic or you're not a psychic. Just because you've got pentagram on the wall doesn't mean you're a psychic.
No, exactly.
So
I think that's one thing I've always really appreciated about like you, and one of the reasons I've always have really enjoyed asking you questions more. If you've ever been at like little social gatherings, sometimes I'll just end up talking to you about stuff like that, because I know it's almost like because you are like that, it actually makes me far more actually intrigued and makes me want to talk to you about it. Whereas if you were all airy fairy and like wafting around, I probably would almost find it a bit like, it would almost like put me off.
Some of my clients actually prefer the way I work as well, especially men. I get a lot more male clients just because they're not into that. It scares them. They think, I don't like that, but they like the way I work because it's very simplistic and it's straight to the point. It's not kind of like, I'll just put incense or sage around you first. They don't like that. So I'm not going to do that. Like, so I'll keep it simple so everyone can get involved, because a lot of people are not into the whole Glastonbury scene at all. They just want to know their loved ones are coming through or what's going to happen in their job in the future. They don't want all of that.
Josh hates
rubbish.
Glastonbury, doesn't he?
He doesn't mind it. He wanted to go the other day, actually.
Oh, has he used that?
Yeah, he's not too bad with it now. Yeah.
Because I remember he went through a stage where he really didn't like it, didn't he?
Yeah, so he likes like Star Child and places like that. Like,
because we used to go when we were little kids. I'm sure he told you.
Yeah.
We used to like roll down Glastonbury Tour and stuff.
It's probably since being with me. He just thinks, I can buy things now that go with the house, or because I have rooms. I have a room upstairs where I only have my books and my crystals and my cards.
Yeah.
So I have a separate room. I don't have it in the lounge and stuff. So he'll be like, "Oh, that look cool. Oh, that look cool."
I can't remember exactly why, but why was it that Josh didn't like it for a while? Can you remember? Because I remember him telling me that he like never wanted to go there and stuff. This was probably about 5 years ago.
It might be the people. Like literally that thing we were just talking about.
I can imagine that Josh would be very much in agreement about that.
Especially when you're like a polite person and someone just starts coming and talking to you about this stuff, and you're just like, all right, mate.
Yeah, he doesn't like that at all. And since meeting me, it's like a lot different how he behaves with it now. Like, because he thinks, oh yeah, there are normal people that are psychics and mediums and like spiritual things.
I think as well. I mean, I say it's not to be like it's not to be judgmental, because I think, at the end of the day, if somebody wants to like change up their life, maybe to like have a positive impact on their life, then like good on them. I'm not at all like anything against that, but I think if you're the sort of person that's always like lived and breathed something, whatever that might be, since like an early age, you're a little bit more like maybe like wary or skeptical of people that go through these like radical phases, and you think, well, but like in a couple of years you'll just be on to the next thing. You know what I mean?
As a psychic is really good though, because you can tell if someone's going to be good or not, or if they are actually into it or not. Right. As well, like when they say, "Oh, I'm into something," like, you're going to change in a couple of years. It's going to be something different, or that, so you don't take them seriously. But then other people think, "Oh, I can work with this."
It's just a phase.
Other people you might think, "Oh, that you're really genuine about it. You're serious." So I meet some people that are very like you would think playing a character, but are really amazing people, like really, really lovely, and quite genuine with the way they talk to you. But you just think, you don't need these bits and bobs. If you got rid of that a little bit, you might not be too bad. But like you
I like that.
really
you just
people.
Need yourself. You just need to be totally authentic in yourself, and then if you've got something, then you don't need all these other things around you.
I think that's something that's always like what people always find very endearing about you, Drew, is it's like you are the sort of person that you're quite open about the fact that sometimes you don't know what's best for you, and you like to try stuff out, but you're very open and honest about it. Like you don't try and you never really sort of try and be something that you're not.
I definitely go through stages.
Yeah, but you don't get into something and then suddenly like you're like this high priest of like.
No, it's just exploring.
Or do you know what I mean? And like, you're more. It's like more of like an innocent, like natural way.
Yeah, like an exploration into different things.
And I think people appreciate the almost like the open-mindedness and the innocence of diving into something completely new and just like a sponge. I think that's very admirable. And as I said, you're very transparent. You don't try and make out when you get into something that suddenly like you necessarily know all about it. You're like, I've looked up a bit about this, it's speaking to me, and I want to try it out. And then you might get absorbed in it, and then you might come to the realization that you're not really, actually it's not for you, or you might take some pros and cons from it, or whatever. So it's like...
It's funny, like my mum always said to me that I'm like, I get obsessed with things. If I do get into Bert, it's only for then I'm on to the next thing. Do you know what I mean? But it's like very like laser focused, obsessed with that at a time. But then it's interesting because it's like lots of different things going on. But then it's hard as well because it's almost like you feel like you don't stick out at anything. You don't like stick solidly out at like one thing.
I know what you mean. Like things take really.
Do you know what I mean?
Some things take years to develop like true.
100%.
Well,
so
like guitaring's obviously one good example of something.
Yeah, you get these things like that just almost whatever phase you go through or anything that almost like follow you all the way through it as
I think a lot of people
like an anchor.
That, a lot of people don't even have anything. Whereas like you've obviously stuck at guitaring and like like you are. Most people I know would probably say that you're like the best guitarist they know, overall. Whether it's just like liking your style or your versatility. Because I know some really good like acoustic guitarists, but then obviously you're like a killer lead metal guitarist as well. You know what I mean? And you can sort of play whatever. So you have that like solid backbone, but then you go through stages of being into other stuff as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, and all of the spiritual things as well. Like that's always been an interest to me for in whatever kind of way that it is. It's like I remember back for like Ouija boards and things like that. Like, I don't know what you think so much about those, Claire, like and stuff, but it's like that was I got so into that when I was younger, like with my mum and stuff. It's crazy.
I don't really do Ouija boards or seances just because you can bring bad things in with Ouija boards. Like when I do readings, I guess it's more controlled. So, and the person's in front of me and I'm like, yeah, that's, you know, their relatives or their friends that are coming through, or they're visiting spirits, which are like people connected to their house or whatever. But with the Ouija board, it's like every man and his dog coming through.
Is it like what I can, in my mind, what I can imagine the difference is, it's like going to visit somebody, say like a serial killer in jail, but you know, there's that like plexiglass and you're speaking to them through a phone. I can imagine that's what you're doing. But with a Ouija board, it's more like going. It's more like opening the jail cell door and then like standing there. It's like that person could just pounce on you.
And what I felt as well with like doing it a lot when I was like younger, it feels that at first like not much comes through, but you develop this like connection that every time your finger touches that, you like strengthen this connection with whatever you're communicating with. Yeah. And then when you do really get into it, the thing will literally be flying. And I got to the point where it wasn't even on the Ouija board. So I'd like have the glass on the Ouija, but then it would fly off the Ouija board and be going all around the house and stuff. And like the glass would like go around the table and just, it was almost like, this is a connection that you have with a spirit, not just with the board. And it like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you do.
It separates that like.
It builds and builds and builds, Because
so I felt an energy building. And it was so weird. And I was like, I got to stop this because I can't separate the you know, before it was like the Ouija board was just, that was that thing. And it's only every time I touch that. But then when it went beyond that, it was almost like anything physical. I could like, you know, touch something else and then that would start moving if you let like the energy come through of like what you're connecting with that. And it freaked me out.
It's interesting. I literally have never ever done a Ouija board, and the reason why, and it's funny as well, because like I think I do come across as very skeptical sometimes, but it just goes to show that I'm not too skeptical, because my granddad always told me not to do Ouija boards. And the reason he said why was because he said he had a really bad experience with it when sort of like in the 60s, because he was doing one with his friends, and one of the guys that he was with, then it suddenly turned really, really dark, and the energy in the room went like, apparently like everyone was like terrified, and then long story short, I can't remember the exact specifics, but basically it was like on the Ouija board, it basically told this man that his like life was going to be like ruined, and then it was like super dark, and then literally like a month after that, the guy's business like burnt to the ground. Not long after that, his like wife left him, and then he was just like unemployed and just like freaking depressed, like basically like for the rest of his life.
Almost like once you've opened up that gateway,
Pandoras Box.
That's what I'm scared of though, because
and that's why like when we were younger in that, if you were ever like, do you want to do one? I was just like, no.
Yeah, but I've done it a lot, like a lot. Our Ouija board actually started wearing out, like you know, like you know, like all the kind of things on it, because we had like a proper old school one that was like my mum got when she was younger and stuff. Yeah. And it started like the letters and that started rubbing off it because we were like using it so much and stuff.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so I wonder. That's what's like sketchy to me.
That's like serious freaking Ouija reps.
Yeah, I know.
And hell coming out.
And that's what I can't explain.
If this is even true,
the energy that builds with that as well. It goes from just this slightly little like moving around to literally it could go from that. It could go from that end of the board to that end of the board in a split second with complete precision and stop, and you think, how did I like that was obviously my energy coming through, but like how was it that? And
it's not good at all. Like you get some clients that say, I've had nothing but bad luck, this person's died, or I've been ill, or their house is like burnt down or whatever, and I'm like, because you've done a Ouija board, haven't you? And they're like, and I'm like, you've got bad luck for life now. Like, I can't help you with that.
So I've done that, and I stole the dreadlock from that 2,000-year-old grave in Peru. Like,
but hopefully that, because you did have a really bad year.
Yeah, I know.
You literally, I said you lost a ridiculous. Obviously, I know we talked about it before. You lost a ridiculous amount of money. You crashed your motorbike.
Yeah.
Mold house.
Oh yeah, mold house. It's all on the up and up now. Like.
Yeah, so hopefully that's your sort of punishment done.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. If it wasn't, you'd have probably gotten like attacked by a crocodile when you went swimming in.
Yeah, true.
In Peru.
Did you see that? Have you seen that video?
Mate,
Did you see the crocodile?
I did like it. Yeah, it was like such a comical video, man. With like the jazz music and that, I freaking loved it, mate. That was so funny. Yeah, so just for people that don't know what we're talking about, so Drew obviously recently went to Peru. Costa Rica. Yeah. And you obviously are into videography, so you took like all these different videos of animals and you just put out on social media like this like hilarious little compilation video to this like jazz music.
Yeah,
so if people want to,
crazy amount of animals there. The owls.
What's your Instagram if people want to have a look at that? Because you did put it, DJ Armstrong Pick, is it? You put it out
on Instagram. I think Meg put it out on Instagram.
Meg put it out,
which is Megan _.
That's one of Facebook's more like personal, isn't it? So
yeah, I did put it out on my YouTube as well. So if you put Drew Bag into YouTube, it's on there as well.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, but sorry to backtrack a little bit. What I really wanted to do is sort of like try and go as much in like chronological order as possible, because I thought that would be like really, really interesting. So I know we've just like branched off loads for about half an hour. But so let's take it back to sort of so obviously that thing happened with it was your grandparents' neighbours, and you said that
they died.
That person had died. They looked through the letterbox and they were like, "Oh my god!" Did you say that? Sorry, there was another incident around that time where you woke up and somebody was leaning over your bed.
Yeah, so then I had someone leaning over the bed, then I saw.
So were you awake, or did you wake up, or what?
I was like waking up, I think, and then when you're waking up, that's the best time to see spirit if you don't usually see them. Because you're kind of more heightened, so you'll see them hanging over the bed, or see them in the corner, go, "Oh, you see me," and they'll just go away like that. So
I've had sleep paralysis a couple of times. I'd like to talk to you about that more.
Freaky.
Yeah,
because they were two terrifying experiences, like really terrifying.
Feels real.
Because I was paralysed as well.
Oh god, yeah. And then I predicted the next door neighbour dying as well. That was a
so was that
one.
around that time? So sorry, but with the guy leaning over your bed, so you woke up. So was it like day? Was it like light?
No, it was evening. So it was like dark. It was like dark.
Oh, so it was like in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It was like the middle of the night. So you woke up in the middle of the night.
That's our favourite time.
And somebody was leaning over your bed.
Yeah, leaning over the bed as a child.
So what did you do?
Screamed.
So did your parents like come in? Or?
Yeah, and then I've had other incidents.
And it just vanished the moment?
Yeah, they vanished. And then I had another incident. This is what I hate to this day, and that's why I like them to speak into my head or see pictures flashing up. I had one speak to me. That was when I was about 9. That was the first time.
So could you see them?
Yeah, so I saw a shadow at first, and the shadow disappeared, and then they went, like, just "Hello, Claire," like that. Like, it's literally like something from a horror film. It isn't like we're talking to each other. Yeah, it was like really like creaky, like this really, yeah. And I just
like we had to do our own little version there. Like, right, who can do the weirdest one? Sorry, yeah, go on.
And that really, I thought I was gonna have a heart attack.
Whoa. Serious?
Yeah, that is horrible.
And this was still about 7, 8? Was
9,
it?
about 9. Then we're going up now. Yeah, so that happened. That was an incident, and then I was terrified to go to sleep then for ages.
Mm-hmm. Just to ask you a quick question as well before we carry on your chronological order of your story. Yeah. So, is it one of those things, or maybe you don't even know the answer? I expect you do. Is it one of those things where they know that you could potentially see them, so they are like searching you out? Is it that sort of thing, or is it more that you can just see them and
my energy's different to other people's, so it's a little bit stronger. So because I'm psychic, so I can see things in the future and stuff like that as well. My energy's more potent, so I can feed off other people's energy and build it, a bit like you with the Ouija board. So you build it up, and then they're like, "Oh, she can see me, and she can read my mind, and she knows what's going to happen in the future. I'm going to try and chat."
So
to
they're
her.
like going about their business, so to speak. But is it literally? Would it be like if you saw somebody in the supermarket with like a band T-shirt on that you liked, and then you were like acknowledging them? Is it that sort of thing?
Yeah, it can be. So sometimes I'll just see them and they'll be like, "I'm fine." Tell them I'm fine. I'm like, who do I need to tell that you're fine? Like, they don't understand sometimes spirit, that I'm not going to necessarily talk to Karen tomorrow. That's their
especially
relative.
not Karen. She'll probably complain about
Karen,
something.
Or Susan or whatever.
Oh, Susan's all right.
So you get spirits like that, and they'll think, but you can talk to them. It's like, yeah, but I can't in the human world, because they don't understand unless they're actually going to come and.
Yeah, you just seem like a crazy woman if you just found Susan and were like, "Hey, Susan, Uncle Bobby says hello."
Yeah, so I would never ever in a million years go up to someone in the supermarket or whatever and say, "I've got your relative here," or whatever. They do that on TV, but you've got a disclosure. They sign off first before you do that. So I'd never ever do that, but you do get that a lot. Do you
feel like comfortable doing that? So like, apart from obviously you rather than looking at it in terms of like, you know, manners, and obviously, you know, there's a way to do things. Like, do you personally mind doing that? Like, if like something asks you to do something, like, does it bother you? Like, do you mind doing it?
Yeah, I get irritated by it. Yeah, I'm like, well, you know, I can't do that, so why are you asking me? It's a bit like someone to tell you to work on your day off.
And does it bother you when people socially, maybe because they know of your reputation? Does it bother you when they ask you, like, if?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it. I've been asked even in the toilets and stuff like that before. Literally be in the loo and then
your granny just saw you having a poo.
Can you do my palm? Can you tell me that my grand's all right? Or can you do? And I'm like,
I can imagine that's pretty annoying.
Yeah, I hate it. Like, I'm like, just have some respect, because I respect you and I wouldn't go up to you.
That's like the equivalent, right, of like when you're walking with a guitar in public and someone goes, "Play us a tune, mate."
Yeah.
And it's super annoying. It's like, mate, am I your like freaking court jester?
Yeah. It's like that, and they're like, well, you can't be a psychic then or a medium if you're not doing it now. I'm like, I am. It's my private time.
Ain't no performing monkey, man.
It's my private time, and I won't do that. And anyway, they don't like you anyway, so why would they?
They're actually super embarrassed that they like freaking fought through their life to give their families a good life, and then you're the result, mate. So,
and you get it from emails as well. Like, some people will sometimes randomly email you and go, "Can you tell me a message from this person?" Whatever. I'm like, book an appointment and then I'll tell you. I'm not going to be like online for an email. It's
so that's super time consuming. So it's a bit rude.
Yeah, it's time consuming, and it can really drain you as well. Like, when you're trying to get messages through, even if it's just psychic stuff, like about people's relationships or whatever, it really drains your mind. So like, people don't get that I can only work literally 3 days a week, proper one-to-one, because it's...
The rest is recovery.
Yeah, the rest is recovery.
It's a bit like a workout.
Yeah.
You can't just work out all the time.
You can't work out every single day.
You need to like work out, rest.
Yeah, and that's
otherwise
exactly
you won't,
the same,
you won't be able to function.
Like, with your mind, like, and sometimes the people's stories as well, that can be really draining too. That you think, oh my God, like, you could have 3 suicides in a row, for instance, and stuff like that, and you see really terrible things.
It's interesting, because I didn't think I'd make the connection, but that's one thing I always like empathise very much with my Uncle Dom. Obviously, we had him on as a guest like a couple of weeks ago, and obviously he was like a copper for like a quarter of a century. And I think a lot of people, when they think of police, and in some cases, rightfully so, because obviously there are some coppers that abuse their power and can be quite annoying. But people just think of like, oh yeah, they just sit at lay-bys like doing people for speeding and stuff like that when they're like doing 3 miles over the limit, and that's like really like annoying for people that are like taxpayers, blah blah blah. But obviously, what people don't think of is it's the police that are contacted to like break down a door if there's like suspected suicide. So like, you're dealing with like death on a regular basis. Some of these bodies are like severely decomposing. So it's not just the death itself, but it's like the physical trauma of like the stench, everything. So I've always very much empathised with that. But yeah, that's very draining, and it's really interesting, because I wouldn't have thought that like talking to my uncle and talking to you, it would like overlap. But yeah, I can imagine that is like a big. That's something that you carry that with you. That's a big
and
strain.
having to like desensitize to it a little bit. If
that's
it's,
not just That's not just like something where you then just like have a can of Coke afterwards and you're just cool. It's like that's like you might remember that for the rest of your life. Like
talking about the energy of it and saying how it like drains you and everything. Obviously, earlier on you were saying that you could almost like feed off someone else's energy.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, could you almost like steal someone else's energy? So that you weren't that drained after these sort of experiences.
Yeah, sometimes. It's a lot of people that come to see me though are not always like perky and happy. Like, if you get a really happy, lovely person, I had that the other
you can
week.
feed off that easier.
Yeah, so you get a really like happy, great person, which I did like last week, and I had amazing energy afterwards. I was like ready to go. I could do another 10.
I think that's why people like being around bubbly, optimistic people, because they've got this charge about them, and it fills the room and everyone in the room with this like sort of spring in their step. And then you're like, everyone will sort of have a good time. But then you also have other people which are the opposite of that, and it's like
draining.
That's like, you have all the term like a Debbie Downer. Like, it makes you feel down just being around him. Like, oh man, I don't know if I'm up for hanging around with this person, because it's like, it's not like it's not like I dislike them, but their views and everything it just sort of makes you like, oh man.
You'd rather be around a positive Pete.
Positive Pete.
And as a psychic, you get that majority of the week. They're all Debbie Downers. Not like, they're not like horrible people, but the things they talk about and stuff are very...
It's not like you dislike them or they're bad, but it's very depressing almost. It brings you down.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Seeking like help for something, or you're going through something, or
it's
like
heavy.
It's
heavy.
Normally people that do reach out to get things like that is because of something like is wrong in your life, or something is like, you know what I mean?
It's a bit like they need to unlocking sometimes, and then I'll just say one thing and it's unlocked. And we'll both feel great afterwards, but then a bit after that, you'll think of the first thing you said, something like, oh my God, I feel really like a bit like drained now again. So you can get very drained from people and the things you talk about and stuff, or like the subject matter. You might literally be talking about one thing the whole time in a reading. So like one of my clients, like her partner like hung himself, and he came through really strong in the reading, but that is all she wanted to talk about, and she was crying about, and very like not hysterical, but very, very intense and emotional. And then like for 2 days on that, I can't work now. Like,
I can imagine.
You don't feel necessarily traumatized by it. Like,
is it just that feeling of heaviness?
It's a feeling of heaviness and tiredness, like, or like, I don't want to do another reading.
Lethargy.
It's like, you know, you hear that expression in it, like, oh, they carry the world on their shoulders. Like, I can imagine it feels a bit like that for a while. Like, there's just this invisible weight almost. It's just tired you out, man.
It's really interesting when you in like the jungle and stuff with shamans and they when they work on people, it's almost like they take in the illness into their own body and then like spit it out. Like so they'll almost be like sucking a bad bit out and then just spitting it out into
sucking the heaviness out.
Yeah, and it's almost, but you take it on as well. So a lot of these shamans, like, so it's interesting. They say, and it's spiritual, but in a bit of a different way. Yeah. And they say, you know, that they almost take on the illness of the client and then know how, with their techniques, know how to expel it out of themselves. So then it just like goes out and it's kind of gone out of both of you.
That's what I get.
But you have to like almost clear yourself of it or let yourself like recuperate. You've got to purge it out.
Like sometimes, you know, when I read people, if they've had like, I predicted your broken arm that time. Yeah. I predicted Drew breaking his arm, but I felt it in my bones.
I remember hearing that story.
And you feel it, and you think, then it goes away, but you feel a bit like exhausted afterwards. And then you get, I had someone the other day, had something moved like from here on their stomach, and I was like, God, I got the worst pain ever in my stomach. She was like, oh, I feel all right actually for a few minutes, and it was the woman in front of me, like who I was feeding off of, and then it went when she left. So it's quite similar, but so you get a lot of that on, or like before a reading, sometimes I feel like quite unwell sometimes. Think, why do I feel ill? Like there's nothing really wrong with me. It'll be the client I'm getting in next. Like you'll just feel like, so that's why I don't like going to like gigs and things like that sometimes before I have a day of readings, because I feel rubbish, I feel awful, I have a bad leg, I have a bad head, or like my neck will really hurt because I've got a spirit coming through that's hung themselves or whatever, and you just
that's not ideal for windmilling.
Yeah, it's not. And it's just like, so I don't like doing things usually before a reading as well. I need like a gap like either side just to recover, and then I can go back to normal. Yeah,
I think that makes sense, and obviously you want to make sure that you're like firing on all cylinders on every reading as well, don't you? Whereas like you can't do that if you're like heavily fatigued from your previous one. Yeah. You know?
And people don't get that. Like, so what I now do, as well as I do back-to-back clients, I see one, another, because if I have a gap in between, I just crash.
Yeah, that's what makes sense. They often say, don't they? It's a bit like, you know, just to use like almost like another training analogy, a lot of people say like, look, if you're struggling with training, you're like, don't like finish work, say, and then sit down and then try and train, because you're not going to do it. They say, do it straight away. Go straight to it. Like maybe like a quick coffee and then go and do it. Because the moment you sit down, you will lose the will to do it. So it's similar, isn't it?
Yeah, like some people want evening appointments and things like that. And I'm like, that's fine if I had some people before, but obviously people are picking their kids up from school or whatever. Yeah. I prefer to work in the morning, just after lunch. I'm done. I don't want to do anymore. Yeah. So if I do evenings, I'm like, oh my God, here we go. Like it can just be really draining. I've already done like 5 today and had a massive gap in between. So
we just got to take a break a second, but we'll be back in a minute.
You're not in Kansas anymore. You're on Pandora, ladies and gentlemen. Respect that fact. Every second of every day.
That was March of the Fire Ants by Mastodon. That was chosen by our special guest today, Miss Clare Stone. Or is it Ms?
It's Ms now, I guess.
Yeah. basically, Bridgewater's answer to Wednesday Addams. Clare is our friend and family member of Nathaniel's, and clairvoyant, psychic, medium, all of that good stuff. So we're listening to her story, and I'll say towards the end of the show more, I'll be asking her some more opinion, like different opinions on all the different realms of the paranormal and supernatural. And I'm super excited actually to ask some questions about and see what you say about some of the things I'm going to ask you.
I feel like there's so much to talk about.
I know. I'm already
so much depth to get into.
Even though there's already like we still got like an hour left. I'm like, oh man, I hope we get like enough time. But it's cool if not. We can always
extended
get
to a part 2.
Yeah, we can always do like a part 2 or whatever. Or just like or just go over in time.
Yeah, YouTube special.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm just trying to think sort of like where we left off. So you said, so let's go back to sort of like the chronological story of your journey. So you said that the first time sort of like something spoke to you. So you said that you were 9 years old, and you said then something went like, "Hey Claire." So you saw a shadow, and then so when you say you saw a shadow, did they then appear more clearly and you heard like, "Hey Claire" or what?
No, so I saw the shadow, and it felt like it was from behind my ear coming through. So like a bit of a sneak, but so I didn't see it. I think I saw the shadow and just got like, you know, ignoring it, and then it was trying to speak to me.
Hey, Claire.
So yeah, it was like that.
Did you say it is a bit different to like a human voice?
Yeah.
In what way?
Yeah, it's just more it just sounds more like
Ethereal.
someone that's probably been like smoking about 100 fags a day or something. It's really creepy. Yeah, it's really, really scary. Like that's why I just hate it so much. It's not like how we talk now and everything. It's a lot more like, sometimes it'll come through as well quite whispery, and then sometimes it'll come through kind of like a gravelly voice, and it's because they're crossing over into our world. That's why, like, they're not living on the earth.
So it's like radio interference.
Yeah.
Like if you've got like a crackly, like
Yeah.
an old radio when you're like tuning in.
Yeah, that's
obviously
what it's
if
like,
you're not 100% tuned in, or if you get like you go out of the range or something, it's going to like
yeah. So
it's
that's
a bit
what
like
it
that.
is.
It's a bit
Yeah.
like
So
that.
that's what they do.
It's like a dodgy microphone.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
And you'll never really get it clear. So, and other people have had
So
that
did
as
you
well.
say anything back?
No, I just
Ignored it.
screamed. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, again, was it one of those things where like you literally scream, your parents come in? Did you say what happened and stuff?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. And what my mum used to do, like, which is really good with, so if anyone's listening to this, they've got children and they're seeing spirits and things, and it's really frightening them, she used to just sit on the end of the bed and to say, go away. It's not our
So
time
that's what your mum
yet.
did?
Yeah,
That's what your
go
mum did?
away, go away, and like try and say, right, I'm shielding you.
That's
So,
quite like an interesting thing that your mum did in a way. It's like almost like that's quite like like proactive, but be almost like quite like mature. Or something, I don't know, for
Almost
lack
like
of
knowledgeable.
for like a lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So,
To just almost be like, yeah, go look, she's a little girl, right? You leave her alone until she's a bit older.
Come back when she's 20 or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Rather
yeah.
than
Like that,
dismissing it as that wasn't real. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
So
Or just freaking out. Because I think a lot of people, I think, when you're a little kid, I know you think, oh, it's all right, adults got their stuff together. But let's face it, we were like, man, that'd be pretty freaky for an adult. You'd like be like, a lot of people would find it hard to keep their composure themselves, let alone know what was the right thing to do for their kids in that scenario.
Yeah, I've always been quite lucky, really. Like, with my dad. My dad's really into it as well, but they're just like, right, just go away, because it was getting on their nerves, because I'll be waking up. So that would be annoying them. Like, sat down watching telly, and you're supposed to be in bed asleep, and I'd be there screaming because someone's saying hello, can I have a chat to you? So yeah, she'd sit there until it was more calmer, like you could just feel a bit more calmer, and then she'd go away, and then have to do it again the next night because it'll come back again, and then you train it to kind of be more controlled then.
Right.
And then with my grandparents, they were really into it, but they would more say, well, your angels are protecting you, and your great nan's protecting you, so nothing can hurt you. And when you get that into that more mindset, you get less scared of it.
Right.
Like, he's like, oh wait, okay, I'll tell my great nan to go and tell him off. And and that works to this day.
Really?
I use that now to this day. If I've got clients and I don't like, or spirits I don't like, I'll say, right, we've got to go to work. And then you'll notice some
spirit
changes.
allies.
Yeah, so you notice changes.
So is it actually, did you say it was your grandmother or your great grandmother?
My great grandmother.
So
yeah.
is it her specifically that you call upon?
Yeah, she's the best one. Yeah.
Is she just like the toughest?
Yeah, she's the toughest one.
Gets
She
her
sorts them
handbags
out.
at dawn, baby.
Yeah, she's sorting out, yeah. And then you get other spirits that go through, like, that have been quite later on in my life, and they can help. But, sometimes...
Sorry, say that again. You've been spirits that you've...
so like my grandparents and stuff that have passed over since and
So
stuff.
people that you knew in life.
Yeah, they can help, but they're not strong. So the higher up in status is
when
better.
you say strength, like obviously it's different than in the physical plane. So when is it like a sort of psychic strength?
Yeah.
Like some weird like mental strength, or for lack of a better term.
Yeah. So yeah, you get stronger as you go along the line. So
it's not like your granddad could just come and like punch the ghost.
Yeah.
It's more of like an energy that's gonna like expel the force.
Yeah, yeah. So they're like in spirit, especially like great grandparents or ancestors, or even sometimes your guides or visiting spirits are more stronger than
Your guides?
Yeah, yeah. Guides.
Did you say your guides in visiting spirits?
So guides and visiting spirits. So I call them visiting
guides.
spirits, which some people call poltergeists, or or people that live in your house that have died but you don't know them. So they can be quite strong in their energy as well, because they're kind of in limbo.
And are they always there?
Not all the time. Only now and again. Some people they are all the time, and then other times.
And you can call on them to help.
And what I do now, which is quite naughty, so you'll get you'll get people come to see me that will say, oh, I've got this spirit attaching to me, can't get rid of it, don't know what to do with it. I know what to do with them. Keep them. And then if you
you say like you can hang out here, buddy.
Yeah, you can hang out here, and if I get anyone
you can
that's
play
annoying,
with Josh's Dragon Ball Z toys.
You can you can deal with that person
Go
I
in the
don't like
man
later
room.
on. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
so, and then they
Some
go.
backup.
So
So
they
it's
do their
like
job in the
brokering
beginning.
a deal.
Yeah, I'm like a dealer over there. Like
You're like a
literally,
Spirit dealer.
Because
pretty
because
gangster.
it's something that used to scare me and terrify me. I now use to my advantage.
Yeah.
And you know, some people, you know, they still get scared of it. Or like, oh, I'm not going to mess with that. And I'm like, as long as you're sensible and you broker deals with them and they know what's what and they know where the line is.
Well, I
can do
guess
what
you know,
want
there's
with them.
this. It's a you know, it beats being living in fear of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it works as well.
And having
so-
some level of control. And yeah, like you know, like brokering a deal, it trumps living in terror.
Yeah, yeah. So
know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's why I don't have any negative spirits in my house whatsoever.
Because it's like you've got this little gang of super tough allies.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like
The
the Avengers.
Avengers.
Yeah, it is.
The
Yeah.
spirit Avengers.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like, yeah, but like just like led by your great grandmother.
Yeah, like she's tough in personality
She's got Thor's
as well.
hammer.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like a
people don't
handbag.
get
She's
it,
like spinning it.
You feel sorry for some people because you see their spirits and you're like, oh my god,
Their
no
spirits-
wonder
You need
you've
to
got
get.
trouble.
You need to get a new team.
Yeah, you need a
Yeah.
new team. Like, but I've always been very, very lucky with mine that have come through because they're very serious. They'll sort it out. They'll get rid of it, and then we move on to the next thing. And so I've always called on her, and I was
One thing I've always been interested in, my granddad's always told me and my dad that we were like very jammy, like naturally, and I think Drew's quite a jammy person as well. Like, you know, like I remember when I was like a little kid, like my granddad, because he was always like a big betting man. Like, I'd come home from primary school and he'd say like, right, he'd give me a newspaper and he'd say like, right, the Grand National's on, like pick a horse, and like if your horse wins, I'll like give you like a $5 or whatever, which obviously in like 1995 would have been like, I don't know, like 15 quid today, I don't know, something like that. A lot of money for like a 5-year-old kid to have. And like it was like crazy how often I would get the right one, and my granddad would say that I was just like my dad, and that my dad would do that as well. Like, do you think with things like that, do you think that might be due to like some external force like guiding your decision?
It can be. Yeah, like so some people get this, which is quite interesting, where someone can die. And then it's like terrible. It feels like a disaster to them. But then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they feel really lucky. They start winning things. They start having really good things happen to them. And I'm like, yes, because they're like making it happen behind you.
Right.
So it can be that. So you do have your spirit team that can make things happen that are lucky within reason.
So they're like still looking after you.
Yeah, so they're still looking after you. They're like, oh, I've seen you struggle with that. Or I've seen I'll give you that as a treat. So some people might find a tenner on the floor like, where the hell's that come from? And I'm always like, that's because your spirit's probably done that for you. Yeah.
It's interesting as well. I mean, I said, I don't know, it's like pure speculation, isn't it? But I feel like with me, the only times in life when things necessarily haven't gone my way is maybe when I've started to take stuff like that maybe for granted.
Yeah.
And then that almost like makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I don't really.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because like let's face it,
Yeah.
nobody wants to be taken for granted. So maybe if you start
No.
almost like taking that for granted a little bit, and rather than appreciating it, then maybe that you need to learn almost like a life lesson.
Yeah, like we call it like personal gain, like for mediums and psychics. So everyone says, oh, you could do your own lottery numbers and they'd help you and they make you win the lottery and things like that. I'm like, no, I can't ever do anything like that because they'd take they'd like punish me for it, or they'd take my gift away.
But that's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
I never like trick the system like that. I do more things.
You'd almost like be
actually
becoming like a villain,
yeah,
like
you would,
like
yeah.
a traditional almost like movie villain, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like people that are given this gift, don't
abuse it, sort of
don't
thing.
ever really abuse it, and you can tell the ones that do because things don't really pan out for them the way they want them to. So
Yeah.
I'm always careful, and that's why I don't do lottery numbers or put bets on certain things because it's personal gain. If they want me to win something, so if I do it just on my own and do it, and they want me to win, that's great.
That's
But
almost
if I don't,
like
I don't.
I guess that's no different than if somebody wants to give you like almost like a gift or a present because they think you're a really good friend and they just want to do something nice for you or
Do
like a
something
family
nice,
member.
yeah.
Then that's no different than that, I guess.
Yeah,
is it? You know?
it's exactly the same thing.
Having healthy respect.
Yeah, it's like at the end of the day, you know,
Gifts.
like sometimes you think, do you know what? That person like really is a positive influence on my life, and I want to do something nice for them. You do something nice for them. Do you know what I mean? It's like no different than that, I guess.
Like
is
I
it?
ask for things sometimes, like I think, well, they're there twiddling their thumbs sometimes. I'm like,
Oh man, I need to pop the shop. Got a fiver.
So like what I do is like manifest. So I write things down, and if they say, oh, that like it could be for my career, for instance, and stuff like that. Like I want a new opportunity in that. Can you help me get the right person for that? No, so not do it for me, but put the right people in front of me to do what I need to do. They'll be like, okay, that's within reason. I will do that for you. But if it's something like, I want to win £1 million. They're like, no, that's ridiculous. Cross that off. We won't do that.
Yeah.
So that's why people say, oh, you were lucky to get to the front of that gig, or well, how did you get that pick or that set list? I'm like, because I wrote it down. I was like, or I just wanted to manifest. I manifested when I was there.
Sure.
And they were like, oh, that'd be cool. Okay, you can have that.
But I guess there's like a line you don't cross like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't.
That's like easy stuff.
I can imagine. I mean, obviously, it's hard to put myself in these shoes, but if I was like a spirit, I wouldn't think that took the mick too much.
No,
I'd be like,
they enjoy things
And
like
like,
that.
and like growing as well, and like growing, like ambition is healthy, isn't it? Like wanting to be more successful and things like that. But it's like, why do you want it? If you want it for like
with great power,
nefarious
comes great
reasons,
responsibility.
yeah, exactly. But that's a good thing if you're a good person.
That's what
you know
Uncle Ben
I mean?
told
Like,
Spider-Man, and it always stuck with him, didn't it?
So it's like, I can imagine you would have all this help from like, if you're on the right path, I think there's a path for you that's good, or the path for you that can seem like that'd be nice, but it's not your path, you know?
Yeah.
That's why I believe very much in karma and stuff. Like,
me too.
you know, like if you like do good deeds, like they'll come back to you. And I think, you know, like as long as you don't try and look at it in too much of like a selfish way, or like, you know, or like an ambitious way, but to me, it's almost just like common sense. Like if you try and do right by people, and I always think as well, like if you can look yourself in the mirror and say that you would do a good deed regardless of when anyone was around or not, you know, like, because there's one thing doing a good deed while there are people to see it, because that might be because you're covering your ass, or because you'd be worried about being found out. But if you would do exactly the same good deed with no praise, or you could get away with something,
on the right track.
or you could get away with something really bad, and you know 100% no one would ever find out, but you still don't do it, even if it could cause you a lot of gain, you know, because you know it's not the right thing to do. I think that's a good way to almost like check yourself like that, you know, like check yourself like that. I think
righteous in a code.
Yeah, I think that sort of makes sense.
I did have one question just on terms of like when you were saying about how the longer you're sort of on the plane, you'll be more powerful.
Yeah.
How would that work for someone like you that is so experienced on that side? Would you be more powerful once you did, you know, go over to that side, or
like Yoda?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so what it means is probably I'd have a bigger job to do on the other side, which is the annoying part. Like, so some spirits, when they cross over, like, you know, all the people that are, you know, very spiritual or do really good, like sometimes teachers get this and things like that when they cross, they have to do things when they go to spirit, like healing for people, or they have to be the first port of call if something goes wrong in the world. That would be my job. When I die. So I'll be like, oh, for God's sake. So people, when they cross over, they think, I can have a rest. I can sit on a beach all day and do that. Yeah. I'm like, no, you can't. Like, it's not like that all the time. And especially if you're more powerful as a psychic or a medium, it's like you get even bigger tasks when you go over there. Yeah. So you've got to do more work. So like if you were like, you know, a Buddhist monk, you'd have to do that when you're over there, but even more so.
So do you ever encounter like people who, or like spirits that were like powerful psychics in life, like yourself?
No, I haven't actually, but I have encountered people, a lot of like nuns and priests, people like that. So
and they are what, like more charged?
Yeah, more charged.
Why is that?
More charged. I guess it's because they've been done, you know, gone and followed all the rules and been helped other people, devoted their lives to a higher being or power. Not necessarily God or Jesus, whatever, but it's just like they've been good.
When you say higher being, like, do you believe in higher beings?
Yeah, so I believe there's definitely, not necessarily a God, but it's just like a higher energy. So what we say is like spirit, angels, and then God or a higher power.
One thing that I've sort of hypothesized is, because obviously you see in all civilizations, like there'll be different deities and stuff, but I mean the same way that, you know, like a word is different in every language, it could just be like, you know, it's a different name for it. Could be a different name for the same thing.
Yeah, like,
so is it a bit like that?
Yeah, it can be like that. Yeah, so you know.
So you just believe in one overseeing, like what?
Yeah, energy for me. It's like one overseeing thing that hears me and keeps tabs on me.
So you almost believe in like one higher being, which is like a quote unquote God.
Yeah.
And then like other beings. Well.
Yeah. So angels for me. Angels to me definitely exist. That's the confusing part for a lot of people. Like, so some mediums and psychics won't believe in God or Jesus or anything like that, but then they'll see angels and like, well, what's going on then? Like, because angels are in the Bible. And
it's like more biblical.
Yeah. So they do exist. And I've definitely had experiences with angels, like a lot.
What about like demons?
Is that a positive experience, like with angels?
Yeah. And a lot of people, they always think with angels, like they've been human and then they turn into an angel. angels have never lived on the earth plane ever.
Well,
like,
I think there's no like written source or anything that goes back that would ever say that anyway, is there? Like,
a lot of people.
I guess that's
think
just more like naivety of people, isn't it?
Yeah, so you get a lot of people say, "Oh, they're now an angel or whatever," and I'm like, and they're like the geeky type of person, like know it all in me is like, no, they're not an angel, they're a spirit. Like
I guess that's more almost like a pet term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which was never, I don't think, originally meant to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, oh, my angel. Like, you're like, you know, like you might refer to like something that you're like, especially like your children or something. You might go, oh, my little angel. But it's not meant to be taken literally. It's more like a pet name.
Yeah.
You shouldn't take it literally. Like.
So yeah, you've got your angels and spirits are completely different. And then below that, so below that is.
So there is the malicious aspect to it.
Yeah. So.
Do you believe there is also like a devil-like being?
Yes and no. So what happens is if you're bad, so I usually say in our limbo, I call it limbo, which a lot of people say is hell. Are people that, you know, your murderers, abusers, that type of thing.
People that have lived their life
is that the
in
same as like
ways.
purgatory in a like Christian sense?
Yeah. But so like a normal spirit, so like if we all died today, we would be able to flip between, you know, heaven or like the nicer side of, you know, spirit and keep going back to the earth plane as much as you want, back and forth. If you're bad, you're not allowed to. You're only allowed to stay on the earth plane. That is limbo. So that's why
I always get a feeling that it's almost like the negative spirits are like the ones that are stuck here because
they live
they're
here.
living in that same trauma or whatever, or what they were creating in their life, so they're just like stuck in it.
So they're stuck and they're not allowed to move across until they've shown they're good to move across, or some will just stay there. You can't move them across. And then below that is your, what we call like demons and negative attachments that you get below that.
So that's below limbo?
Yeah.
Okay, so limbo is like your analogy for like purgatory?
Yeah.
Right, and so there is like something below that.
Yeah.
And that is solely where more like things that were never humans.
Yeah, so like angels, so the opposite of angels. Yeah. So that is what that is.
So you do essentially believe in a heaven, a purgatory, and a hell.
Yeah, but it's
But you don't think that humans could ever go to hell.
No, yeah, so a bit like angels. So like as in a human can never be an angel, a human can never be a demon.
Yeah, but could a human spirit go to hell?
Yeah.
Do you believe in that or not?
Yeah, not really.
Or do you think they would more just like stay in limbo?
They stay in limbo, so they can't ever go to hell. Yeah.
And is that because or let's just call it heaven just for the simplicity's term. I'm not necessarily saying that, you know, you believe in it, you know, calling it heaven or whatever. Is that because humans that have led a more decent life can go to where like the angels live, can go to heaven, so to speak, and that is obviously a pleasant place to be.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're denied that if you more often than not live a malicious lifestyle and you are barred essentially.
Yeah, you're barred. Yeah.
So you're in limbo and it's like access denied.
Yeah, access denied.
Mofo.
Yeah, right. So that's what.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it all because I find it fascinating.
Yeah,
and it's just very interesting for me to like know what you think about it.
The rules in spirit are insane. Yeah. Like people think when you die, there's no rules or nothing. You just walk around, do what you want to do, and there isn't. Like some spirits that are good will even get told off. Like so, sometimes I'll bring spirits through.
Spirits that are good get told off.
Yeah, get told off. So
what, by angels?
Not always angels, it can be other higher spirits, so I could be the one to be telling people off when I die.
Oi, Clarence.
Or it can be that higher power, so like God or whatever above them.
And why would they be telling them off?
Because they've said too much to me that they're not allowed to tell me.
Right. Divulging secrets of the beyond.
Yeah, because I can read spirit as well, so not just human, so I can read a spiritual energy, and so sometimes if they won't tell me something, all right, I'll get through that. That'd be easy, but that's fine for me to do that. I'm a naughty human. I'm allowed to do what I want to do. They're not allowed to do that.
You're not expected to have that higher level of like wisdom or whatever.
Yeah, they should be blocking themselves and protecting themselves, and they're not doing that, then
it's almost like a chatty Cathy can't help themselves every now and again.
Yeah, you get that much. Yeah, so if they talk too much, which is usually the case.
There's always that like couple of people you know, and that you're like, right, I can't, like someone's told you a secret and you know like I've been told this secret, I know I can tell this person, I know if I tell them, right, look, this is sensitive information, you can't tell anyone, you know that they won't tell anyone, and there's always that people like, I can't tell them. So it's like a bit like that. Yeah, it's a chatty Cathy, isn't it? So they're the chatty Cathys of the spirit world.
So they will get told off, and also if they do anything strange, so as in like flickering lights or they bang doors, that type of thing, which you would want as a psychic, you know, it's good effect. Yeah. They do not like that. They're like, no, you come in, you're quiet, you say what you're saying, and you leave.
And I guess that's why it doesn't happen very often.
So they'll get a slap on the wrist and they say, we're watching you.
It's
So-
almost like free will is embedded into like every form, not just humans, like spirits as well. And you, but if you do it with your free will, if you choose something bad, there's going to be a repercussion to you.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like that karmic thing. So it's almost like the same thing with spirits. It sounds like they'll do something out of their free will of doing it, but then they'll get checked as well by like.
Yeah, there has to be rules and systems, I guess, with everything, just in case, because I guess if
Embedded into
they're
the
running
code.
free and doing what they want to do all the
Otherwise it'd
time,
be
it'd be
anarchy.
chaos. Well, it'd be chaos for everything that we do, even down here. It would just be chaotic. That would be coming out, and it would just be, you know. Just
There
really
are
bad.
rules.
I don't expect you to know the answer to this, because I guess it would be a bit like asking somebody like how humans evolved without being able to like look up texts and and books and documentaries about it and stuff. But do you know at all, or do you even have any like educated sort of like theories on sort of like where angels and demons like originally came from or anything like that?
No, I don't. Like, it's strange because I always feel like I'm learning every day. And like, I've learned that over the years because I used to just think it was spirits and that's it. Like, I didn't think of angels and stuff. That'd be later on in our timeline.
Because we'll go back to the chronological order in a minute.
So I don't know at the moment. And I don't know if it's all to do with energy. So, when it was all created, it was banging together, like the Big Bang and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And it creates this massive energy. And that's the only thing I can think of because everything is energy. Everything bad, everything good is energy.
Do you know what that just made me think of? Literally, I was reading the other day, and this is going to sound so hilarious and nerdy, but this is all for my fellow fantasy nerds out there. Right, do you guys remember in everyone here is a fan of Lord of the Rings? Are you a fan of Lord of the Rings or not really?
No, I'm not.
You're not really?
No.
Oh, sorry. I
Josh is. Josh
yeah,
loves it,
obviously Josh is, yeah. So in I'm sure you'll know anyway. In the Fellowship of the Ring, there's that scene in Moria where Gandalf confronts the Balrog, right? And then they fall into the depths of Khazad-dûm, right? And obviously they have the whole battle. Everyone thinks that Gandalf's dead, but really he's having this insane battle, like literally, and it's something ridiculous, like 100 miles under the earth. And it goes into more depth in the books. I do think he touches on it a little bit in the movie, but he basically says that like really, really far under the pits of Moria, really far underneath, were these things that he describes as nameless things. All right, and he just the book is Tolkien, such a freaking brilliant writer. He explains it so eloquently and so brilliantly in actually the book. But he says something like he says that his foe, as in the Balrog, was his only respite from the horror of these creatures. Bearing in mind that the Balrog is literally described.
He crawled out of there.
Well, the Balrog's literally described as like a demon of Morgoth. So if Morgoth is like the devil in Tolkien's word, then the Balrog is essentially a demon. And obviously the Gandalf is a wizard in our world, but he's essentially an angel. That's like basically what it is. He's an angel. He's a Maya spirit. Maya spirits in Tolkien universe are essentially angels. The Balrogs were Maya spirits, but they followed Morgoth and became demons of Morgoth. So the Balrog is essentially a demon. So he describes these things as like so bad that like he says he's my foe. Essentially a demon is his only respite. And obviously they fought their way through, and then they got out of this like crazy pit. But it's really interesting because Tolkien writ so many notes and stuff, and when he was explaining in his own notes, which were sort of like found after his death, like where these beings came from, what he wrote was it just goes, like he's like a scholar of Cambridge and everything, Tolkien, so he was like one of the best literary minds of his day. But he said that the universe came into being. It was called like the music of Iluvatar, I think. So that's like, it was almost like it's described as he like sang the universe into existence. But the reason why evil creatures exist, originally Iluvatar wanted this like plane to be this like land of, so it would have just been things like elves and ents and stars and stuff. But the reason why there's evil is because Morgoth, who was Iluvatar's most powerful child, essentially. So Morgoth was the most powerful Valar, which are essentially, it's like if there's like, the same way in like paganism, there's like a pantheon of gods, but then in like Christianity, there's like the one overarching god. So if it's more like, there's almost like both in Tolkien's universe. So Morgoth is the most powerful of the pantheon of the Valar, sort of like Eru Ilúvatar's most powerful son, and he also starts singing. As Eru Ilúvatar's singing the universe into existence, Morgoth starts like singing as well, and it starts corrupting. And apparently that is the explanation of the nameless things. So when he started doing it, it's like evil crept into the world, and he just sort of created malice and evil. And as a result, these beings... So sorry, I know that was very long-winded, but it just made me think that was almost like the way you were describing it then, like with the Big Bang.
Yeah.
and like the
And
energy.
the start of the Bible,
Energy, yeah.
and
the
on the
energy
first
thing.
day there was the Word or whatever, or like they say about God, you know, the Word like is and that's like the sound basically, like the sound that birthed all of existence, you know.
Oh, what does he say? It's like on the first day there was light, wasn't it? Is it that?
right?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I don't know. It might be, mate.
I thought
I can't
something
remember.
about the Word.
Let there be light.
Oh yeah.
He said,
It's like
and God said, "Let there be light."
and there was light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry. Yeah. But anyway, going back to what you were saying. So you believe that obviously, in the creation of the Big Bang and stuff like that, it was this super energy, and what you believe that obviously, you know, there's always going to be two sides to a coin. So obviously, with the creation of the power of the angels, there had to be the opposite of that.
Yeah, the opposite, and that's why we're in the middle, and we're good and bad. So you know, we've got both sides of it, so you can go either way. But and like with the demon type thing, you know, a lot of people say they can look a little bit like spirit sometimes, and they'll attach to your back or your head, or people sometimes get nothing but bad luck. So I could go into someone's house and say it's haunted. I'm like, it's not spirit. It's not good or bad spirit. It's actually more, you know, what they call like sprites and things like that. Like you can get stuff like that happen. So that can be bad luck for some people as well. Yeah. But it all goes in together. And
imagine being worried that your house had been like haunted by like spirit, and then you find out that it was actually just demons.
But like a sprite is different than a demon, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like, you know what I mean? It's the kind
a
of
sprite is like a mischievous entity, isn't it?
like mischievous entity. So even like fairies. A lot of people think they're lovely and sweet and cute.
Yes, I've heard this.
But they're not.
Yeah.
They're damn evil sometimes.
I mean, I don't know if you know, but like, so like, my paternal side of my family are from the Isle of Man, and it's a very, very superstitious place to this day. There, man. I don't know if it's like it's because it's so isolated. You often find like in isolated places. It's why, you know, you'll find little communities in the middle of like nowhere, like hundreds of miles away from any city in like the north of Sweden and stuff like that, and they tend to be a lot more still like pagan and stuff. And it's very, very similar with the Isle of Man. It's like this little island in the middle of the British Isles, and obviously it's not really tainted by any other cultures or any other influences. And to this day, a lot of people in the Isle of Man, obviously more elderly people, they leave out food and gifts for fairies and spirits at night, because they believe that if they don't, like bad will come to them. But obviously we grew up with this like Disney feeling of fairies, like, oh, these nice little sprightly creatures. But they're saying like, no, it's like back in the day, like in the Isle of Man, if you're like a farmer and you didn't like leave offerings for fairies, they could like ruin your crops.
Yeah, that's what I do.
That.
I leave like foxgloves, for instance. They say that they live in foxgloves. Right. Josh had an incident with that. You shouldn't clip them, you shouldn't cut them, leave them. He did that. He cut it, and I was like, something's gonna happen now. And he literally put a stake nearly through his hand, literally right by it. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to offer it something now to say sorry. So what I do is give it ice. Like they say ice is quite good. Like they like things like that.
Why do you think that is, or do you not know?
I don't know, I've read it up.
They get really hot.
Yeah. Or like some people leave flowers, so they'll plant other flowers around, or, you know, bread, like stuff like that.
Banging sourdough.
They're
like, bro, you know it. I'm saying it.
I don't have anything like fairy-like in my house at all, though. Like no symbolism, nothing like that, because they do cause mischief. Like, so you do get problems. If you leave them alone, they're fine. If you go towards them and cause trouble and clip things near where, you know, people have got little statues, whatever, no, leave it alone. I don't go anywhere near it.
Right. So before we go back to sort of the chronological order of your sort of journey, when you saying, you know, that somebody could be like haunted, for lack of a better term, by like a demon or a sprite or something like that. Why does that happen? There might not even be an easy explanation, but why does that even happen in the first place? Like, or how can that happen?
It can be that they're just in the wrong place.
Right.
And it
wrong place, wrong time?
Yeah.
Just like getting like mugged or something?
Yeah, it literally can be like that. Or they can be bad sometimes as well.
So that's like opening
they love
the door.
it. Yeah, you've
that's
opened
like
a door. So like I attract
darkness.
mainly good spirits. You know, I can attract the bad ones as well because, you know, I like talking to them, whatever. But yeah, if you're bad, you can attract demonic things as well. Not all the time for some people. Some people it is you're just in the wrong place, or you've been near someone that's bad and they've had it on them. They're like, oh, I'll go with you. And it can be I always say to people, always try and pretend you're a little bit happy if you go to a haunted house or somewhere you feel is a bit dodgy, because they will attract your negative energy. Bad spirits and demonic type ones will literally attach to you if you're like really depressed, if you feel like really down. So always try and trick the system.
I was going to say that, like fear and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
fear.
If you're like really fearful, like in me, it feels like you're kind of weaker
Yeah,
when
you
you're
are, yeah.
fearful
You're
and you're
letting them
down.
in.
So it's almost like, and they play on that, like they feed off that energy, you know.
Yeah,
What do you think about what do you think about this? This could be potentially foolish, maybe like foolhardy would be a better term. What do you think about sort of like the feeling of embracing your own power in terms of like if you went to a place like that? I see it as positivity as well, but maybe it's like a foolhardy type of positivity. Like, for example, I went into the Edinburgh Vaults, which are apparently one of the most haunted places in Britain. There's this guy that lives down there called Mr. Boots, and apparently back in the days, like hundreds of years ago in Edinburgh, it was like the criminal underworld, and very literally the criminal underworld. So you'd have like the streets, obviously, of Edinburgh, and underneath, about 30 feet of solid concrete beneath, there was literally like almost like a city under the city, and that was where the criminal underworld was. So you'd have like the prostitutes, the drug dealers,
The black market, so to speak.
the murderers. Like literally,
Yeah.
it was like you wouldn't want to be down there if you were a decent human being. Like it was a bad place. And the worst of them all was this character that they call Mr. Boots, and he was like the lord of the Edinburgh Underground, right, of the Edinburgh Vaults, and he's apparently a very, very bad spirit down there. Apparently, in particular, doesn't like pregnant women.
Yeah.
So apparently, like if you go down there when you're pregnant, a lot of women, apparently like a ridiculously high number of women have said that they've left, even if they don't feel anything at the time. Like apparently a lot of women feel like they're being punched or scratched or whatever. But some women don't even feel something at the time, and then they'll go back to their hotel if they're a tourist or whatever, wake up the next day, and they've got like a claw mark on their back or their legs, or there's a big bruise somewhere. So which is weird because you'd think you'd feel that.
Yeah,
Which just goes to show it's how like, almost like otherworldly it is, whatever. But when I went down there like positive, so like fortified, I would say. Like my brain was like fortified. There wasn't like a chink in the armor, but I was almost like, "Come at me, bro." Do you know what I mean? Like,
I think that is like powerful though. Like when you're in that thing, you're in that protected energy. It's only going to be something that's more powerful than you being in that energy.
But what do you think of that though, Claire?
Well, me and Josh went actually, funny enough, to Dartmoor Prison. We went and visited a similar thing.
Yeah, of course.
And they were saying all these haunted people.
Obviously, a lot of murderers been in there.
Yeah,
rapists,
yeah.
whatever.
And I walked in, I was like, oh, I felt right actually. So I don't feel that bad. I don't know, it's because I protected myself. I did pick up a few things. I kept getting the name Sam come in my head, like constantly when we were in the car. That's a bit weird. And as we walked in, there was this like statue there, and it said, "Hi, my name's Sam. I was a prison guard." Like at the thing, like in Victorian times, or whatever. Like, how weird is that?
He was showing you around. He was like,
and it was. I felt like I was being shown around by this guy, and I felt safe. Yeah.
I'm Sam. Nice to meet you.
And I think if you're good in your head,
Say again, Sam.
and you visit anywhere like that,
Derek Acora. Yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah, go on.
If you visit anywhere like that, like you fortify, you're usually okay. And sometimes people might, like me, I'll get a bit defensive in there as well in my head, like, no, you're not going to get me. Like,
that's what I was like.
Yeah. And they don't usually.
But I was like, I
reckon they would stay away from that, and they would like, unless they were like super powerful. Like, I'm going to show this one a lesson.
Well, one thing that I just sort of makes sense to me in terms of just common sense. I have found that the people that have told me a lot of stories of almost like the way I would describe it is more like being like plagued by paranormal experiences. And when I say plagued, I mean like they do not enjoy it, but it tends to happen to them. You can tell that there's this really high level of fear in them.
Yeah.
So it made sense to me, like, okay, well, don't be like that.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, to me, I'm almost, it's like, look, I'm not going to play your game. Like, I'm not going to be scared of you. So,
and like everything is energy, I think it's got to be aligned. So so if you're positive energy, you're going to attract positive energy rather than like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think of this as well? Claire, I find this really interesting. I say we will go back to your sort of in chronological order, your story in a minute, but obviously everybody that comes into a room, and the thing is, this isn't even really like, well, to me, it's not even really anything supernatural. It's almost just more like it's something tangible that you can feel. Everybody has an energy, don't they? And everyone has a unique energy, and that's what we were talking about earlier about Debbie Downers or like or like happy people or whatever, and how everyone can affect the feeling in a room. Some people have very, very intense energy. Some people have very, very weak energies. Like, we're not being rude, but some people might come into a room. You might not even notice they've entered the room. Other people enter the room, and you can't not ignore them. It's like all eyes on them, right? So, what are your thoughts on like individual energies like that in terms of like with just like alive human beings? Like in terms of what makes that difference in like energy or power or is that like because obviously is that just like something we were born with? And if so, like, what necessarily even makes that? Yeah, again, I'm not expecting you to know the answers because I know that some of the questions I'm asking you are a bit freaking crazy.
It depends. Like some people, it's just born into them. It's their DNA. Like it's a normal scientific thing.
Well, almost like a powerful lineage.
Yeah, yeah, and then
a lineage of formidable characters.
Yeah, and you can tell though the difference. So you can tell the ones that your normal scientific DNA. They're like their dad. They're like their mum or whatever. Other people, you can tell something's around them. Like causing it to be more extreme or like kind of push them down a little bit. So
push them down.
Yeah, so like they're a bit like withdrawn or just extra hiding in the corner. You think.
Well, almost like some force is almost like beating them down.
Yeah, so they'll get that depressive kind of.
What do you think the motive for that could be?
It can again just be bad spirits around them. Like
so it's
they've
not
been
really
in the wrong
a motive.
place.
It's almost like being cruel for the sake of being cruel.
Yeah, like sometimes they'll do that, or they'll attach them because they've just had a blip in their life where they've just had a bit of a down moment. They're like,
open the door.
Yeah, open the door in, can't get rid of it.
Is it like they feed on that? Like
yeah,
that
they
that
they love
spirit.
it. They
yeah,
absolutely love it. They'll feed off of it constantly. And that's the same with an excitable person as well. So if you get someone that's jumping around the room really excited when you think, God, they're
Your mum, Drew.
annoying.
No, not the annoying.
No. You think it could be their ancestors or their family or even like a spirit in their house that's very excitable, but it's just ramping up a little bit too much. Like it doesn't feel normal. So you can usually read that.
It's manic.
Yeah. Like,
so is it almost just luck based upon what spirits you get then?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what? So are we all born? Are we all like born with like spirits?
Yeah. So you're born with guides and things like that.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And is it this? Is it? This is gonna sound funny. Is it like a set amount, or can it vary?
It varies.
So someone could have like one, another person could have like what, 4?
You usually get about 2 or 3 on average.
On average.
Person. I've got like 6 or 7.
But is that because of your
you need extra ammo
deals?
coming in.
Your deals.
And then you get some
deals.
other people will just get that amount, but they might need that extra guidance. But then you get spirit guides that will go away sometimes as well. So you'll be born with someone and some will swap over because sometimes
They want to retire.
Yeah, like they'll be like, no, I want to work
You're
with
too
that
tiring,
person
mate.
now, or
Right.
you don't need my help as much.
Switch.
Or I'll be reborn or whatever. Like you can get stuff like that happen. So yeah, sometimes spirit guides will swap over or they'll come back once they've done their job and what they want to do. And
is it weird for you, like when you are like around people, can you always see their spirits that they're born with, or is it like they're not always there, or what?
No, I just tune out usually. Sometimes I can sense it.
So it's almost like an ability you have, but unless you're sort of turning it on.
Yeah,
it's a bit like choosing to close or open your eyes.
Yeah,
is it a bit like that?
Yeah, it can be like that. Like sometimes you get it more than other times. So sometimes I'll walk into a building or like at a gig, for instance. Like, oh yeah, I can feel it, but I can't be bothered with it. Just get on with normal life, Do
you sometimes find it overwhelming? Like, do some people have like very overwhelming like spirits?
Yeah, like some people have noticed with me, like they'll think, God, she's really shy, or she's really awkward, or she's really weird, or she just can't look at me. And I'm like, that's because you got someone behind you and they're being really weird and I don't like it and I just let them go away.
That's definitely me and you.
Or like the energy of the room can be off, like you can sense spirits there, and I just go into weird mode, like I don't like it, and like sometimes Josh will even be like, oh, we'll just sit in the corner. Like some people will think, why are they sat in the corner, we're all here, and I'm like, I can't be around you. I just can't be around you.
So can you
like,
instantly tell, like we were talking earlier obviously about almost being, for lack of a better word, haunted.
Yeah.
Can you instantly tell if someone is having that happen to them?
Yeah.
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 Sorry. Just to differentiate, so if people are born with spirits, but being haunted is different.
Yeah, so you guys...
This is an external entity,
yeah,
which is then coming and for whatever reason trying to almost like glue itself to you.
Yeah, so your guides, you don't know, they're not blood related to you, they'll be randomly picked for you.
The ones you're born
you.
with?
Yeah.
So they're not spirits that that are relatives of yours?
No, you will not know them.
Are they spirits? Are they spirits? Or like, as in, were they once
they
humans?
lived, yeah, so they lived and they've had their experiences
That's
here.
fascinating that they weren't your relatives or anything.
Yeah, and then they will get picked to be with you because it's like you need an outside, external force kind of managing you. Because sometimes your ancestors might not be good enough.
Or they might be biased.
Well,
yeah.
Could that be like a thing? Like a bias thing?
Yeah. So, and also sometimes you might get people like I've had come to me where they've had parents that have abused them.
Right.
And
obviously,
then they
in
passed,
that, it wouldn't be a
or
good idea.
grandparents,
Right.
and it's not a good idea.
Of course.
or even adopted, like things like that. So you need an outside force to manage you.
Like almost like a neutral force.
Yeah.
When you were saying about like having a job when you pass over, is that what it would be for a lot of people? Is almost like your job would be like a guardian
I'm going to
angel
go back
of
to your
someone
council
else.
job.
Yeah.
But rather than like vetting people for foster kids, you'll be vetting guides for people that are born.
That could be my job if I get given that.
It's literally like the same job.
Yeah, I would.
It is the same
I'd
job.
be taking people off. I'd be doing criminal checks on them. I'd be like,
excuse me, I quit this job freaking decades ago.
Back to Liam Neeson.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So that's what happens. And some people will never know their guides or see them, and that's fine. You're not always supposed to. You know, it's just those people in the background. And sometimes people will take on the guides' personalities a lot as well. So if you get like a very aggressive person, someone that flips like a switch, that is because your guide is just so insane that you've got, and that you'll take sometimes that part, not in a mean or nasty way, but just
let's face it, there's
calm down.
Well, there's just like with everything, there's a spectrum. Isn't there? There's a spectrum of you know, how assertive or aggressive you'll be. And it changes with everyone. It's not like you're aggressive or you're not. Or like, there's a massive spectrum, isn't there? Like some people are like so aggressive, it's like you can't even deal with it. Other people are like, come on, man, you need to stick up for yourself a lot more. You know, and there's like a lot in between, you know? Yeah,
or like one of my guides is a priest, like a Catholic priest.
Judas
that
priest.
Was, Judas priest, yeah. That's like from, you know, way back. But he used to hide like from persecution, stuff like that. But I always find that takes on my personality because I'm a very quiet person. I like to hide away.
Reserved.
I'm very reserved. I'm not out there and open, you know, so
you
I
won't
hide
necessarily
away.
speak too much unless you're spoken to.
Yeah, I'm just very, like, and I always find sometimes that's a little bit of my personality that I take on. And like with my other ones that I've got like this Victorian lady is another one of them, and she's always cleaning and doing things. And I thought, I'm extra clean. That is what I do all the time. Like, so and I find it fascinating that sometimes I take on these like people.
That's good though. I mean, I'm always like, because Josh always says to me about how like much of a domestic goddess you are, and I'm like, man, that's freaking awesome, man. Yeah, that's really handy.
Like yours, you know, could be there lifting weights behind you. You know, you could be taking on, you know, someone's
Hercules.
Mate, that'd be sick.
It's making me really want to know who my guides are now.
I know. I think you have to be very mature around Clare because you want to ask more in-depth questions, but at the same time, I'm sort of like just trying to respectfully not.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to ask.
No, I wasn't saying that you were going to. I was just saying you have to.
I want to create like a communication with them, and and like because if they're there anyway, like I kind of believe that. I'm like, you know, they'll be helping you with these unseen hands. You know, if they're there. Oh baby,
they'll be on your patio, Drew.
Oh, that's a spiritual one.
What do Drew's guys think about Drew's 90 mile an hour?
Yeah, that is a bit scary, isn't it? They see all. They see all.
They were just in the back seat of your escort, like, for God's sake, you're driving and down on the motorway.
Drew's guys are like, oh.
Yeah. Not again.
Yeah, but you know.
Drew.
Yeah. But they pay me back by when I get super wasted and get my head stuck in a window for 8 hours.
Yeah. That's what you need to ask them. You say, guides, help me. Come on. Like, this is really annoying.
It's really weird. When I was younger, I don't do it anymore. Maybe I should. When I was younger, I used to pray a lot, Claire.
Yeah.
And I've never been religious, and I didn't even know who I was praying to, but I used to see it as almost like it. To me, it was really weird. And I feel like it has become more again so in the last couple of years. But when I was younger, it was almost like faith was very important to me, and I didn't really even know what like that faith was in. But I would pray sometimes, or like even fairly regularly. And I remember I even asked, because I remember like talking to some of my friends sometimes when I was a teenager, and I remember like one of my friends asked me like, so they're like, "You're quite religious, aren't you, Cam?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." But I thought it's because I realised that I'd bring up the word faith a lot. I would say like, you've got to have faith. And I just think that's like quite interesting, like why a little boy would naturally do that. I didn't grow up with religious parents. Well. Yeah, like,
I don't consider myself necessarily religious, but if I ever enter like a holy place or a church, I always sit down, you know, have a prayer. And it's not even, you don't even know what it's to, but the same sort of thing where it's just like you're kind of putting it out there.
With me, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like because I'd be in a church, I would just do it. Like I would have faith.
I've done it like, in places like that as well.
In fact, I don't think I've ever even done it in a church.
I think it's really really important to trust in like natural things. Well, what I mean like it's like the childlike innocence that you have when you're a younger person, things are natural. I think you are tapped into like truth and like, and you know, so if you had faith when you were younger, there's a reason why you had faith.
Yeah,
you know?
I do know.
Like,
I do remember enough to think that like I was like doing it. I think I was doing it to like two different things. I think I was praying partly to just some sort of higher entity. Like I believed in something. Like not necessarily like I thought, right, whatever that is, and also almost like my ancestors. It was like those were the two things I think that I was like praying to.
Usually it's your subconscious making you do that as well, because they're there and you're feeding off of it without realizing it. So they're saying, ask me a question or pray for this, do for that, and you're like, oh. Like some people do that too. Like like every single day I'll ask my angels to protect me. And people think, you're not religious. I'm like, no, but that exists, and I feel that energy around me, and I know that will protect me. And that's probably like a lot of children will do. They'll pray, or if you go to a religious place, you do that because your subconscious is kind of telling you to do that because there is that energy around you to do it.
Do you feel... it's interesting because, I reckon I did that right up until I was about 16. And then I'd say the reason I got away from that was because
your prayers weren't answered.
No, literally like partying too much. I got to the stage where I was probably like drinking alcohol like every single day, and then as I got a little bit older than that, I was like smoking weed too much as well. And I felt like that probably maybe like interfered with something.
Lost that connection a little bit, perhaps.
You lost your way.
And then it was like I was like that for like years, and then it almost like I had to like, obviously, because the thing is, when you're doing self-destructive behaviour, you don't realise it. It takes a moment, it takes an epiphany to realise, and then not only that, so that's like the first key thing, but then you also have to then do the work to like get back to maybe what you were. Not necessarily what you were before, like on base level what you were before, but then obviously like the evolved version of that, because you're not going to be the same as you were when you were 16 if you're 25 or something, are you?
100%.
But what are your thoughts on that? So like substances, so like whether it be alcohol, any sort of thing that we can ingest, do you feel that can interfere?
Yeah.
With being in touch with those sort of things?
Yeah, so I don't really drink. I only think I drink once or twice a year,
Yeah.
if that. And I never done
Little
drugs.
vodka and Coke?
Yeah, that's like it.
Yeah,
once a year.
Is it vodka and Coke or rum and Coke?
Usually like a Kraken and Coke.
Oh yeah, rum and Coke.
So I don't drink, I don't do drugs, nothing like that. And I never have done. But
do you feel like that could interfere with your...
It would, yeah. And like you will do... Sometimes I've done parties with people and I'll be having drinks and nibbles and all the rest of it. And I'm like, it'll interfere with it. Like they don't like it. So yeah,
it's like cutting a cord or something.
Yeah, and you're not going deep enough. So you're too messed up here. It's like you're too much on the earth plane when you're doing drink and drugs and things like that. So... yeah, you're not clear enough to... And
it's funny as well, obviously, because like, say like when I did it, it was like very innocent in a way, because obviously like, you know, when you're like a teenager, you do not have the wisdom to cope with necessarily what's going on in your life. And I think especially you know, you're at that weird age where it's like, you're kind of a man, but you're still sort of a boy, sort of like a boy in a man's body. And obviously this whole new thing has opened up for you in terms of like women, drink, you know, people want you to party with them all the time. You know, and if you're a bit more like crazy as well, and you're just doing like mental stuff all the time. So it's like, and if you love socializing, you love partying with like-minded people, then the next thing you know, you're doing it almost like every day. You know, it's like it's not like you think like, yeah, I'm just gonna be this like animal. You know what I mean? But then it's like
becomes a part of your lifestyle quite easily,
and it creeps in, man. Yeah. And then before you know it, it's like a couple of years go by, and then it's like you notice maybe it's starting to do you damage.
And it's exciting. I remember like being that young and like getting really into things for the first time. And every new experience was like, whoa, I can feel like this. You know,
I remember it was
it's just like exciting, isn't it?
It's really. I would just almost think that, like, you know, I thought, well, I've been in school for like 11 years. Like, I just want to fricking just party my ass off.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, well, I could concentrate on academia, or I could, drink, go to fricking loads and loads of gigs, fricking hang out with my mates all day, doing loads of just weird, funny stuff, and spend and not even like, I've never been one of those guys that have been like, oh yeah, I want to go pull chicks. But I think that like there's a nice thing, especially when you're like a really young guy, about spending time with members of the opposite sex. Like, it feels rewarding. And because I always had lots of female friends, it was just nice. You know, you'd have like lots of female friends, and when you're at that age as well, like no one's necessarily so much in like a serious relationship so much, or at least a lot of people aren't. So it was just nice. It's like it's this weird sort of like hedonistic freedom.
Yeah.
But I think that can very easily lead you down a bad. Well, I think you see it all the time with like rock stars.
Yeah.
Don't you? Like how many rock stars they start off like
yeah.
they were like pretty screwed, got their head screwed on, they're nice guys, and then they all the drink and drugs, they become egomaniacs. They just like sex addicts, drug addicts, alcoholics, and they have to go like rehab after rehab after rehab. They relapse back into rehab, divorce, you know, on the straight and narrow again, release another decent album, but then, you know, back in rehab. So it's like, you know, it is tempting, isn't it? But right, I tell you what, we're gonna end this on the radio, folks. But we're going to carry it on Spotify and YouTube. So if you're listening on the radio and you want to carry on listening, just go on YouTube, type in Pandoras Box Podcast, or go on Spotify and type in Pandoras Box Podcast. And we're just going to keep this going because, we just haven't finished. So to everyone that's listening on the radio, thanks for listening. We have been Pandoras Box. Thanks very much to Claire. We will be back again next Monday with another Pandoras Box. But as I said, we are going to carry this on this conversation. So, you know, hit up Spotify and YouTube now, folks. It's funny, isn't it? It's like it's with me, what I find interesting in my head, it's almost like trying to separate what is almost just common sense and what could be more spiritual or like paranormal, or even if there is a difference, if that makes sense. But as I said, as you said earlier, it's almost like for me, so it's like I lost my way or whatever, or lost my path, and then there was all this stuff that I was doing in my life that was like interfering with maybe like the more innocent me that was a younger lad that had this like belief and would pray, and I know I was a very good natured person, and I know I am at heart, but I think obviously I lost my way a lot.
I think faith is powerful, man, and it's beautiful. Definitely. It's like a beautiful thing. It doesn't, it doesn't matter how you wrap it up. It's like a feeling inside, and when you're tapped into it, it's like it's like a pure goodness, I think, and believing in that, like. It doesn't matter how it manifests or like what it is like spiritually and stuff. It's just it is this force that you can't see, but that makes a positive influence and impact in your life and in your being. You know. I'm gonna ask Claire about Poo Demon. Poo Demon. Because that'd be ruined. Yeah, because I was saying. So. Oh, we're uncensored now as well, which is cool. Oh yeah. Fuck yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess like there's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there? But I've always been in like an extremist by nature, and like for me, like I very much had like an epiphany, like when I don't know exactly how old I was. Maybe I was like 23 or something like that. I reckon I was probably about 23, maybe 22, but I reckon I was probably 23. Anyway, I literally had like an epiphany one night. So like before that, I would say I was like going through the motions of life. So like not self realization. I think obviously, and you see a lot of people go through their entire lives without self-realization, and you think, mate, what are you doing? Like, sort it out. It's probably time you sort it out now. That was sort of like my moment of self-realization, and it was like, I love the word epiphany because I think it's a beautiful word. I think if you look up the definition of the word epiphany, so it's like an extreme moment of almost like realization. Yeah,
realization, clarity, that sort of thing, and it can rapidly change you in like a split second. Very powerful thing, an epiphany. And I was living in this flat at the time down the NDR.
A spliffany.
And a spliffany. Yeah, and this is going to sound really hilarious because of the nature of it, but then again, it just wouldn't be like a story of one of us guys if it didn't involve something weird. But yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and I needed a poo. So I went for a poo. And I didn't turn any of the lights on, but living down the NDR, there were like street lamps. So like there was like where the bathroom was, I had like my living room door open.
Hadn't you got like super blazed before though? Like before you went...
I was blazed.
I remember. I remember you said blazed. Like, but when you told me about it before, you saying you were like super blazed before that happened, but went to sleep, but then kind of woke up. Yeah, but I was still blazed. So this is why obviously super hardcore skeptics will be like, man, like, come on. But like, and that's fair enough. And I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm just saying this is what I perceived. Okay, I'm not saying. I'm saying more for the thing of like, if you're down a path of something and that's not so good for you or something, like say getting blazed every night.
Well, if it becomes like an issue,
because it's like that might be part of the story of like like why the epiphany came. You know, like maybe I don't know. But this is, as I said, I haven't got a dog in the fight, so to speak. I'm just going to say what I experienced. So I woke up, went for a poo,
And then, there was like enough light coming in from like the street lamps that you could just about see, especially because my eyes by that point obviously had adjusted to like the pure darkness of night. And I suddenly very much became aware of this presence of this entity that was on the left of me. And I was like, the way my bathroom was, it was like my toilet was here, and then the bath was like a long ways to my left. And it was like something was sat on the side of the bath, so close to me that it was almost like our knees were almost touching.
Yeah.
And it was like this black figure, and I interpreted it very much as like demonic.
Yeah.
Like it was humanoid, but didn't quite look human.
Lizard thing.
Nah, it wasn't like lizard-like at all. The way
In my head it is.
I don't necessarily think this is like accurate. I think this is probably because of my cultural influences. That's obviously probably like bastardized this. But the way I would almost like explain it is, like Sauron's armor. That's like that. Like a humanoid shape, but there was like something not quite right about it. A bit like jagged in place.
Spiky.
A bit spiky, a bit jaggedy, and like black all over. Not quite human, but humanoid. And it was really weird because I didn't really react to it like that strongly, but that's what caused me to have an epiphany. And I realized that like almost like my mind had become consumed by darkness. And that sounds I know that sounds almost like comically extreme. My mind was consumed by darkness. But
like you didn't care that it was there.
It really had though.
Yeah.
It really had though. And I said, I know that sounds comically extreme, but my mind had become almost like overcome with darkness. And as a result, it didn't shock me. But that's what shocked me. It shocked me that it didn't shock me because I think like a healthy person would find that situation very distressing and very alarming. But the fact that I didn't showed me that there was something really wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know, obviously, obviously there's a million things that I could hypothesize, and even you might not know the answer, but like God knows what that entity, if there was an entity there, was like trying to do, or what it's whether it was just there to try and torment me, or whether it was actually trying to have a positive effect on me or whatever. But regardless, the impact it had on me was actually good because then I really, really sorted my life out.
Well, yeah, that can happen because it can be like, do you want to come with me? Or like, because sometimes
that's what I saw it as.
Sometimes people will get those types of things. They can harm themselves. Or like, when people say, oh, they just went and like killed themselves and they were like fine the day before. Sometimes you can get things like that, or like where they've hurt themselves. Like I've seen something and it made me just like go crazy. You can go so deep into that, and some people like you will go the other way and go, no, I don't want any of that. I'm going this way instead. And some people go right towards it and embrace it and love it and enjoy it. Right. So yeah,
I was like on the edge of the precipice. Yeah. That was like my moment of the edge of the precipice, and I was either going to go with this, hold its hand and walk off into the night with it.
That gave me chills.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so you can get that type of thing where, and like,
it was like make or break moment.
Yeah. And some people, like a normal person, I guess, who wasn't smoking weed or whatever, might have like been like, oh my god, no, I want to go to the light, I want to go to like nice spirits. Whereas you probably had to make a real deep decision, do I want this or not anymore? Like
as I said, for me it was like the epiphany was, the realization was that how alarming I didn't find it, but actually how it was like a scene from a horror movie, but I was like casually just sat there having a poo. like that was I realized how weird that was.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you hear stories about like, oh, and then something happened to me and I was terrified and I was under the duvet all night and I was sweating, and then I was like, nah, and I was like fine. Like that's dark, man. That's freaking dark, isn't it?
It's good to be terrified of things like that in a way. Like if you do scream, if you do like panic, that's normal. Yeah. That is a normal reaction. If you don't, and you do see it with some people, and you see it with a lot of witches, like witchy types, they go towards it, they love it, they want to embrace it, and that's when you can do real damage, not just to other people, but to yourself as well. Yeah. So you can go deeper.
I definitely think, I've definitely done a lot more damage to myself than anybody else. I definitely did do some people damage, I think, during that whole sort of time, and did some things, that I'm very not like proud of, and also I can't do anything about that now, but obviously all I could try and do was try and get back on track and try and like become the person I felt like I was born to be, and that was obviously like really important for me at that moment.
Yeah.
What I love about those things as well is, people can debate whether experiences that you have are like real or not real, but the effect of them is the important thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
like
mean?
at the end of the day, it had the same effect.
And whether you experience like when you experience it as a real thing, and that obviously does have an effect on you. So that's like the important part. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
and I tell you what, talking about extreme. So literally, like the day afterwards, I literally just made the decision to just become a teetotaler. Like obviously, like I do drink a little bit now, like rarely. To be honest, like I can't even tell you the last time I had a drink. It was probably some social occasion. It was probably with you at some point or Josh at some point. I basically decided I would become a teetotaler, like basically like until further notice. And
so was that from then that you kind of did
from
that?
that moment?
Whoa, that's
just completely
crazy.
stopped doing any intoxicants of any kind. And I tell you what, I literally for at least a year, I can't remember. Obviously, I didn't like decide I was going to do it from like this date until this date, but I literally like lived like a monk. So I would just all I would do with my spare time. I didn't see anybody. Socially. All I would do was go to the library, go to the Bridgewater Library, and I would sit in the library and I would read, or I would go to the gym, or I would just be like almost at home. And it's funny because I never like thought of it as, you know, in terms of like a meditative way, but I was essentially living like some sort of like Spartan monk.
Yeah.
Because it was like the physical training was very important to me.
Yeah.
But then also it was like, and I tell you what, I reckon I increased my IQ by about 5 times in 1 year as well. Because I'd sort of like mentally dawdled, obviously, since sort of for about 7 years, where all I'd been doing was basically getting wrecked and partying. And then because I've always had loads of interests and always been into lots of stuff, I think all of our friendship group, obviously, whether it's Nikki C, Josh, Drew, you know, we always have done. And then I just became this like sponge. And obviously just like, I guess had to put in that groundwork and that foundation, but then like gradually got back on track. But sorry, I don't really know where I went off that tangent. I thought it'd be interesting. Oh yeah, that's the reason I wanted to say that was because I thought it'd be interesting to get your obviously the view on the poo demon.
It's funny though because I had that when I was learning tarot though for the first time.
Right.
Didn't do anything. All was doing like for like 3 years. Tarot. Nothing else in my room. Like concentrating. Like just so focused. Like, because people say you're so quick with it, like you can, you know everything.
You're learning your craft.
Yeah, learning my craft. But I think sometimes that can be spirit or your path. Going right now, we've got to hone in and we've got to do this. We've got to do this learning time before we can move on to your next phase of your life, which is going to be more busier and excitable and fun.
Yeah.
Can I ask? I don't know. Obviously, feel free to not answer this if you don't want to. But is there any like distinct memories or moments you've had that have been like you've almost experienced quite a dark entity come through, or anything that comes to mind that you've sat back and went, whoa, that's a bit intense for me?
Yeah.
What, when Claire's been doing a reading?
Either that or even just from like a day-to-day scenario that you were
just
thrown
like even
into.
just like hanging out with somebody or something.
Yeah, or even like something trying to contact you, or just some sort of bad entity, some demon or something that was, you know,
when I was little,
came into your paths.
So on the timeline, going back a bit, the house I used to live in, that was a really dark energy that wanted us out of the house, didn't want us there, but we couldn't move, so I had to be stuck with it. And then the second time was with a client of mine. It was a really, really weird reading. She was a really nice person. I didn't like the reading. I was like, oh, I don't like this. It's a bit weird, odd. Spirit came through and he was smoking and I just smelled fags like constantly. It was just like horrible cigarette smoke. And then I was just coughing and I thought, oh, it's a smoke. All of a sudden his hand was around my neck, like trying to choke me, and I just couldn't breathe at all. I just felt like I just can't breathe. Really, really negative energy. And then I walked out the room and I was still coughing, but it was a lot better. That's a really scary time.
Why do you think that spirit had that reaction? Because you said the girl was nice.
Yeah, it's because they're not a very nice person in general. So it was in limbo. Obviously, it hadn't gotten
the
across.
Spirit was
So she didn't know that. She hated them as well. Because after the reading, I said, "Oh,
was this something that she was being almost like haunted by?" So this wasn't one of her guides or anything like that.
No, it was her stepdad.
Right, and obviously he was an unpleasant person.
Yeah, and he had abused her and stuff. And after the reading, she said, "Oh, that was my stepdad that you got through, and he abused me." I was like, "Thanks for telling me now." It's like, it's like I didn't want that in my house or like near me and stuff. But sometimes you got to do that. You got to do the difficult work. Like, you know, when you see things like Most Haunted, like Derek Okora and stuff like that, where he's choking and screaming, and go, "Oh my god!" It's not like that. It isn't like that. Like, that you do get the frighteners on you a little bit because you think, God, what if he didn't stop?
Need to get Granny in there to whip his butt.
Didn't even have time to ask.
Yeah.
It was just like, sometimes they can be so strong. Luckily, I just walked out the room and Josh was like, why were you coughing upstairs? I'm like, I was being choked to death. Like,
so that was
Josh is like downstairs, like ordering a new Dragon Ball Z.
Upstairs getting choked to death. This woman was looking at me like, what's going on? Like,
it's so funny in a way, like the dynamic between you and Josh, because obviously you have so much in common, and that's one of the things that makes you such like obviously like work as a couple. But I feel like you are much more like there's something incredibly like quaint and innocent about Josh in a lot of ways, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I was saying earlier on about like that darkness that I sort of had when I was in that bad part of my life. Like, there is almost like no darkness in Josh.
No.
Is there? He's like such like a quaint little happy little fellow.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, like every now and again, like anybody, you might get like a little bit annoyed. But even then, it's almost like an innocent annoyance.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's like, that person's really pissed me off.
Yeah.
It's like so funny. Whereas you see some people, like someone like triggers them, they are like, you can see the rage.
We're so
and there's like
yin
this
and yang,
bubbling rage in them, and you're like, whoa, that person's like.
It's good in a way.
Man.
It's good in a way that he's like that, because I think if he was like me, it would have been hell in a house.
Yeah, sure.
But he had his first spiritual experience the other day.
Whoa!
Yeah,
Exclusive.
You'll hate me talking about this as well. You'll be like, oh my god!
That makes it even better, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, he got woken up in the middle of the night by his spirit, so he could see them clear as day. And I'm like, don't take my job away from me, because I hate that. And he said this guy was looking out the window and he had tattoos down his arm, like that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I got woken up again by the same person, because I got woken up before, but I didn't really like see them too much. I could just like feel that something was there. And it was this younger guy, so someone like I would say about our age, that's crossed over. So it's for a
30s sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's about, I think, you know, like for a client of mine that I'm going to see, but it came through a bit early and Josh saw it, and he said that he couldn't go to sleep for the rest of the night and nearly had a heart attack. And I was like, now you know how I feel.
I can just imagine even like Josh saying, I nearly had a heart attack.
Yeah. He said, God, and he was literally like was talking to me like he was having a go at me, like, oh, like, how dare you bring these people through into our room?
That's really inconsiderate. That is.
That must have been so
he?
freaky. I've felt things happen, but I've never seen anything. Like I'm not, you know. I think people are in contact with like spiritual things in different ways. Like my sister Sherelle, like she's like seen things. I've like seen her see things when she's not. No, did I tell you about that when we were?
You've told me some
Lee's?
things in the past,
and I saw her and she was smoking a fag outside, and I was round Lee's house. And I just saw her in the garden, and she just put her hands over her mouth like that, and like dropped her cigarette. And I just opened the door. I was like, "Sherelle, you right?" Like, and she just saw this like guy like walk through like where the garden was, like kind of through the fence, and then just start peeing up against the wall.
Yeah.
and she said, look, can you not see? She was like, and it was still there when I came outside as well, and there was a broom, and he was like standing, but the broom was right through him, like he was standing exactly where the broom was, so she knew it was a ghost because the broom was just right through his body. And I was like, what the hell? And I remember another one when we were at Maunsell House, and we would do like a ghost walk around Maunsell House stuff, and that was really cool because you had EMF readers, and you could.
What are your views on EMF readers, Claire? Sorry.
Well, this was weird. You know that thing about the lights and stuff. So rather than you go to this spot and they EMF things, we were having communication with the EMF thing. So we'd say beep twice for yes, and be like a bit like the table tipping thing. Yeah. And it was using
just
that medium.
Channeling energy.
Yeah, it was using that thing to like communicate with us. That's what it seemed like. Yeah. But when we were doing that as well, Sherelle was it. We were in a room. And my mum was there as well. My mum's like super allergic to cats. And her nose started just getting like, and she started like sneezing and that. And Sherelle was like laughing. She could just see this cat running around the room. And like, we did not see a cat in there, like at all, you know. And I was like, what? So I think she's got more of the visual kind of thing.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, like.
Is it, I can imagine as well, a bit like most things in life, it's not like black or white. It's like there's a spectrum of everything, isn't there? So is it more like, it's not like you either have it or you don't. Is it more like, obviously some people might never see something and they'll be lower on the spectrum. Yeah. Some people might see a couple of things in their life that might be a little, and then other people might see things all the time like you, and obviously you're much higher on the spectrum.
Yeah, like I'm even different, like day to day. So one day I might see spirits clear as day, like I'm sat in front of you right now. Then other days I might just see a shadow. Then another day I just might feel an energy. I won't actually see it. at all, I'll feel it, or I'll hear from it, or it'll flash pictures in my face. It'll be different. But that's the same for people that don't have like the gift. They might see a spirit clear as day one day and then not see anything for ages. And then you might get another person that feels like, I feel a presence here. And they're like, oh, no, you don't. Like, can't see anything. So everyone's different, how it communicates. Again, like a radio, what you're tuning into and how strong it is. So Sherelle might have had it really strong that day, no offense. And then it was like, oh, no, you're not supposed to have that. Like, and then switch it off again.
Yeah, because she's never said anything since or anything like that or seen anything. But she said it was like clear as day, this old man. But where we were all having a good time, they're like, what she got the vibe of it was like, he was almost like joining in the end. Like he'd been to the pub and he was walking home and he was just having a piss up against the thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was what it seemed like. And it is, it's these funny, like natural kind of like communications that would happen. It's not like this like crazy like thing. It's just quite a mundane, weird little thing.
That's what I get. It can be mundane. Like I saw one out here, like before we did Tarot, I told Nathaniel, I was like, there was a man stood by the gate, like just stood there, just like that. And then like, you know, other times, you know, I've seen like on the way to work once, I saw a little boy walking along and he had a school uniform on, but it was like an older one, but it was so casual. It was just so like, I just walked past like, oh, he's dead. Oh, okay, right. And then just like move on. Right. Whereas another person would be like, oh my God, like I've just seen a spirit. Or like the time I waved at my dad's friend, he was on his bike going past, it was Bridgewater House, where I used to work. And I waved. And then afterwards I went, he's dead. He's not alive.
That's weird.
So you do stuff like that sometimes.
So is everyone, like, when it comes to attire and clothing, would you just be in whatever you were last like alive in?
No. It depends. Sometimes they are.
Sometimes what about age?
Is it more like
with
manifestation?
age, would it be?
Yeah, so it depends on the person and what they want to do. So sometimes people will wear exactly what they were wearing when they died. Other people will change their clothes.
So you can like manifest.
I guess, and change their face as well.
Is it more
change
like
their face?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So if you were like older, for instance, a lot of the time you will look younger. So, but when I'm doing a reading, I'm like, can you just please be the age you died, not younger, because it can get confusing. And so you can change your face at the end when we've done what we're doing, and then they'll do that.
If you want to show me how good looking you are,
don't worry, I know you're good looking. Just show me the wrinkles.
Or like sometimes people have been in wheelchairs or been like really injured and things like that before they've died, and then they'll appear, they're standing up. They're no longer in.
You can sympathise.
That's nice. That's very nice.
Stuff like that. But they will still show me like sometimes I'll sit down in a wheelchair, and then afterwards we're like, I don't need that anymore, and they'll move on.
Right. So it's like almost like a part of their character. Obviously, like a crucial part of their character by the end. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? So going back after like an hour of going off topic. So like going back to so I think we left it as when you told your grandparents about the guy with the gun, the one that tried to kill you. Yeah. So sort of like in your journey after that, so what happened? Because obviously it's funny, isn't it? Because obviously you just other than all this crazy stuff, obviously just like a normal British girl going to school and stuff like that. So yeah, so what was your sort of like development? You know, did it start to become like? Did you notice that it was things like this were happening more often? And what was the impact that had on you? And sort of tell us about this sort of development.
So after that, it would happen more and more and more and more, like just like a normal day, but just seeing a spirit again. So it's
happening daily by this point.
Yeah, and especially, but that was when I couldn't control it. So you would see it all the time, constantly, and it was just making you feel like you're going insane. And especially if you're in the car as well and you're seeing dead people on the side of the road as well. So you'd see that a lot. So people have been in accidents and things trying to move across. Like, so sometimes spirits can be in limbo because no one's picked them up yet.
So you need to be picked up? Yeah,
so you'll get picked up by someone. So usually relatives.
You hear that a lot in near-death experiences, because I listen to them all the time. I love listening to them. You do, and they say, you know, in the hospital bed and that, there was this one guy, and he was there, and he didn't know he was just about to die, but he was having a really bad heart attack. And he said the last thing he shouted, and everyone was in the room with him, was like, Jeff, or something like that, you know. And then when he came back to life, they were like, what are you doing? And apparently his brother who was dead, Jeff, was just visibly there standing at the front of the bed just as he was dying, and he took him over onto this like life review and stuff like that. But yeah, you hear that a lot.
Yeah, so they have to be picked up. So I'd see like a lot of stuff like that, and you think, well, what can I do? Because I'm like a 12-year-old girl. I can't just go out and go, move to the other side, come and get them, because it's a bit weird. So yeah, we get that type of thing. And then I'd start seeing bright lights, but more. like really like blinding lights all the time, but that was like energies near where we live going across.
Right.
So you see that. And then the angel thing happened, and that was when I was at school. I was literally just sat there normal day, just doing schoolwork, and then there's really angels are weird. They're not like spirit as in like they'll just stand next to you like just normal height. They'll be higher than you. So it's really long bright light behind me. I could just see in the corner of my eye.
Is that like a tallness thing, or is it because they're levitating?
They're tall. Just the energy's a lot taller than ours. So I saw one of those.
Do they look humanoid, or is it just like a life? Like, is it like a light, like a form?
You can kind of see hands. So I just saw the hands at first and the kind of the arms, and then the rest was
Super
a
hands.
light. Yeah. And I looked, and it wasn't for me. So they came through. It was actually for the guy behind me. So the boy that was sitting behind me, it was someone coming through, and I was like, oh my God. Usually I say now to people, angels only come through, like for people like me, if I need something, you know, quick, because they work quicker than spirit, or if something's going to kick off. They're the emergency button angels. Spirit will come through every day.
When you say kick off, in what way?
Like something bad.
Traumatic experience in your life or something. Like,
So that's when people usually see angels on me. So say, I nearly died and I saw an angel, or I saw my nan or whatever. Like, so that is usually the time you'll see an angel, or you'll see them when you die. Sometimes they'll come
So
through.
if you see an angel, you think that's almost like a warning sign that something bad is going to happen imminently.
Yeah,
angel of
usually,
death.
So I didn't know what happened with him. But yeah, and I just like, oh my God, like that's like really, I was actually
So they're there
quite
to
shaken with
they're
it.
here to sort of like help protect you during this oncoming traumatic event.
Yeah, so they can either be here just to protect you and keep things as calm as they possibly can, or they can be there to say, look, you're coming with us soon, or like your parents coming with us soon. We're going to be, we're collecting.
Man, that's heavy, dude.
So sometimes when angels come through, it can be something more extreme. If it's like a normal death, like an everyday heart attack, or, you know, they just died in their bed or whatever, you'll get a cluster of spirits coming through. So I can usually tell if someone's going to go, because spirit and sometimes angels will cluster together more and more and more. So I feel like I won't even want to go out anywhere or do anything because it's just too intense, that energy. Then a few days later or a few weeks later, someone will go, feel back to normal again.
Wow.
It's fine. But yeah, so then I had the angel experience.
What age did you say that was?
I was about between 13, 15, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so those like teenage years. I was at Haygrove then. And then when I left school, it was all about tarot cards.
So you got into tarot cards. So by this point,
Yeah.
by the time you're sort of like, you know, year 11, 16, just about to leave school, were you already at a stage where you'd sort of made peace with what you were seeing, and were you already sort of in that sort of negotiation stage that you say, you know, you basically like negotiate nowadays? Were you at that stage, or were you still like learning and still sort of coming to terms with it? Or?
I was coming to terms with it, but I was also a bit like, what am I going to do with this?
Right.
I was like, what am I going to do with this? Because, you know, you see mediums and stuff like that on telly, but I think, I'd never be able to do that. I can't do that. That's never going to happen. So I was just like,
why didn't you think that you could do that?
Just not confident enough.
Right.
Like, just too shy, too overwhelming. And I just thought, well, if I get it wrong, then everyone's going to be after me. And like, I don't want to do that. And I just thought, I'm going to leave school and work in TV or film. That was what my passion was. I was going to work in films. That's what I wanted to do. Spirit's boring. Like, you're just visiting me at night, being a pain. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I want to be in Wayne's World.
Yeah. I was like, I want to go and tour the band or be in a film. That's the two. So I went to college and I did film and TV studies.
Yeah.
Then left there and worked at a radio station.
Yeah.
Same as me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clay used to work
Literally,
at,
like-
Literally exact same journey that I took, film and TV and then radio.
And Spirit was
BCR
always
FM.
there, yeah. So Spirit have always been around me, even then, like give me messages and stuff. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with that? Can't do anything with it. And then, like left that and went into kind of job to job, like normal jobs, admin jobs, the council, still doing tarot cards. And then people would start coming to me for readings, so like my family, like my cousins, and like aunts and uncles and people like that. And I thought, oh, actually I'm not too bad at this with the cards. I'm controlling it now with the cards. These messages are coming through clearer, and
So do you see it as like a tool to like hone it?
Yeah.
And like it seems like anchor the energy and stuff rather than you being like overwhelmed by it. It's like that's a bit
how they describe like the wizard staffs in Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's not like the staff's generating the energy. It's
because
like
I think you need to learn about tarot. It's like you said, it's like a process that you go into and you spend a long time with it to actually learn the ins and outs of it and everything.
Yeah, so I know everything about tarot, but when I'm dealing out the cards, sometimes I don't even look at the cards. It's like sometimes people do drawings, like there's a medium called Tyler Henry and he'll scribble, but that's him honing it in, getting it right. So that's what I do with the cards. So people are like, why are you shuffling the cards like for half an hour? You're not even laid them out yet. I'm like, because I'm keeping him where he needs to be. Like, so that's why it works like that.
Keeping the hounds at bay.
Yeah, and also to not let them go off because spirits get bored.
Yeah.
So they'll just be like, well, we're not doing anything right now, so just walk off. Like I'd be like, oh god.
Do you find that like some tarot cards work better than others, or does it not matter? Oh, it does matter.
Yeah, unfortunately. Like I've got the same deck that I've used since
Why
I was 18.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe because at the time when I first opened the pack up, they're just like, that was a really good time, that was a really good energy, I'm going to stick with that.
So that's like your pack?
Yeah. So my main pack is the one I've had like since I started tarot, but that's going to have to go soon because they're getting really worn out.
I can imagine if you're using that like all the time.
Yeah, which is scary.
Is it the original one? The what's it called? The Ride Away.
Yeah, and I do have other ones that I use those, so I'll do those for videos or email readings and stuff like that because they're good and they're like, that's good, but I don't need as much control with them.
Yeah. What about, because you dabble in some other stuff, don't you? Sorry to like branch off a little bit, because you do dabble in other things like that, didn't you? Like, are you still doing like rune?
Yeah, so I do runes now and again.
I really like rune reading.
Yeah, I want to do that with Clare.
How does a rune reading work?
Same as tarot really, except you shake them up, put them down, then you just pick, and then you just kind of like read the meaning, but not just read the meaning, you're also getting the energy off that at the same time, so you like go what you want.
I love that like Nordic influence with the rune reads. That kind of like really like. Because Meg's got some, but
some more
they were made, but her brother made them, and that's like a really nice thing. Like, kind of made them with all the stones and carved the runes, like the rune shapes into them and that.
Yeah, the runes.
It feels like really, really cool doing it. Like just picking some out of the bag.
The
like,
runic alphabet.
Down.
Yeah, I'm really picky with like my cards, my runes, everything though. Like whoever's made them or wherever they've come from, I want good energy.
Sure.
So someone's like,
because do you see it almost like smithing? It's like you're pouring your essence into that. It's a bit like Sauron in the One Ring.
Yeah.
So it's like an evil ring. So it doesn't matter if you're wearing it and you're like a really good character. It's like the essence. It will turn you evil, sort of.
Yeah.
Or it will corrupt you.
Yeah, so like sometimes I'll do cards, whatever, and I'm like, oh my god, that's just like really negative. Or I feel like bad vibes of it, or I feel like I'm bringing something I don't want to bring in. Yeah. So I'm like, nah, I don't want to use that anymore. And that's with oracle cards as well. You'll get that too. Really? Yeah. So I use sometimes the same oracle cards over and over again. But I always think that's spirit's personal preference as well.
So with like oracle cards, would you say that's on like the same level as like tarot cards and things like that in terms of like what you're invoking?
Yeah, it can be like oracle cards are usually like nicer.
I was gonna say
yes,
because like sometimes like me and my missus will do like she'll be like, do you want to do some oracle cards? And I think maybe I'm foolish for thinking this. I see it almost as like more of like a bit of fun.
Yeah.
I don't take it seriously. Whereas if you said to me now, like, right, Callum, I'm going to do your tarot cards, I'd take that more seriously, I think.
Yeah.
I think I would take it. And by seriously, I mean, like, it would just seem more like, it would have more, like, the weight of the situation it would have more weight.
More credence to it.
Like with oracle cards, I'll use... I don't ever use with clients oracle cards. I just use them for online or just for myself or Josh. Whether he likes it or not. Do
I have to?
Yeah, Benny, I've got this new pack I need to test on someone.
Yeah.
So sometimes it might be like more of a daily thing or whatever, but not. Yeah, I wouldn't use it on client unless it's someone that's a bit kind of like, don't tell me anything bad, and I'm like, I'll just get these out because
it's almost like it's just easier.
It's just less hassle because
they almost like want you to tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah, so I think I'll just get those angel cards out. They'll tell them something nice.
You don't think that they can handle the truth?
Yeah.
You can handle the truth.
Yeah. Like that's the thing that kind of annoys me sometimes in readings. Like they'll say, don't tell me anything bad. Don't tell me I'm going to die. It's like as if I'm going to tell you you're going to die and as if I'm going to tell you something terrible is going to happen to you. But I will tell you the truth though, good and bad.
Otherwise, what's the point? Why are they even there?
Yeah.
I do think that.
Like, why are you there? Like, why are you seeing a medium? Like, some mediums get really, really funny with people and they would just chuck them out. Like, I'm not that bad yet,
Yeah.
but like,
Brackets yet.
yet. I'm building my business up at the moment.
Yeah.
But like
Your ass is grass.
But yeah, sometimes I just think, why are you here? Like, you need to have an open mind if you're coming for a reading. Don't come to me.
And almost be like mature enough to take the bad with the good.
Yeah. And sometimes
Life isn't sunshine and rainbows all the time,
it's
is
not.
it? Right?
And usually sometimes you'll get a bad thing, but it's backed up with a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, but they're like, oh, that was actually okay. I can deal with that.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. Or sometimes you're just telling them what they kind of already know. Like, why did you do a load of weed last night? And then you've been with a load of people and been in 10 relationships and... You know, it's like, well, obviously that is going to be bad, isn't it? And then you're going to
you think that would
people
be
don't
obvious.
get that. They're like, oh, I thought it's going to be like, well, amazing that you really did. Like, it's like you dig your own grave sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not all spiritual energy.
It's a bit like that's what I was saying earlier. That almost like some people can go through their whole lives without any self-realization.
You get that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, you just think, well, I probably would have left you as well if you did that.
Yeah.
So
It's like don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I think it's hard. It can be very hard to analyze yourself because you have to try and look on the outside in, which obviously is going to be hard to do. Harder than evaluating somebody that's like next to you or someone that you know very well. But I think it's still very important to try and do it and do it honestly.
I think it's like a life mission to do it. The more it's a never-ending thing because like things like that whole. I find it really interesting, like the conscious and the subconscious. Like you're kind of ruled by the subconscious, but you never see it. You know, do you know what I mean? And that's the parts of your personality that you don't see or that are very obvious to other people, but to you, you're just like it's a bit blinders. And sometimes I think people don't want to face that, or like you know, and a bit of it can be a bit of a reality check when you're in a situation and someone is just being truthful with you. But that's like you got to be in your integrity as like a medium and stuff to be like, I'm going to be truthful to you because. You know, it might be hard to handle, but you need this right now.
And I also think, you know, there's like we all have flaws, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I actually think it's a very admirable strength to be able to admit your weaknesses or admit that you might be not going about something the right way. I don't think it's like a weakness to admit it. I think it's the opposite. I think it's a strength. You know,
some people do. They'll admit and think, you know, I have done all this, and how do I get back on the path again? I'm like, okay, let's have a look, and that's really cool. And then, but sometimes this is the thing that people might think is a bit weird: is you'll tell someone something really good's going to happen. Yeah, all these great things are happening. Like, well, that's a load of rubbish. That's never going to happen because my life's rubbish. It's like.
So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it's like, well, if you've
decided your life's going to be bad, so it's never going to be good.
So it's like, okay, if you're a psychic, why are you visiting a psychic then? Like if you feel like it's going to be bad forever, then you may as well just stay at home.
Like what do they want you to say?
Away.
Again, like you know, if your job is there to tell them the truth of what you see before them. Or it's before you.
And it's literally like sometimes you'll say, this has happened in the past, like there's been breakups, whatever, but it's like, oh, this looks really amazing. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. And then you think
some people are just addicted to drama, aren't they?
Yeah.
Can I ask about sort of the idea of fate and destiny within that? Because I'm really interested with the idea of destiny and when it sort of ties in with that. If you were to take someone's reading and it was to say, oh, in your future, you know, you may have this happen, you may have all these positive things come. How likely is it that someone could neglect that and change their own fate by not being true to themselves?
They can. I've had that a few times where people have like gone off and just done something different anyway, which is fine, you know, free will, you can do whatever you want to do. But they always come back and say, it took me ages to get back to that point you told me was going to happen. So it always is going to eventually happen when I do a reading.
So there is always an inevitability. If you do give someone a positive thing, it is going to happen.
You can go, of course, and do something great. I've had that before, whereas I told this woman, I said, this relationship's going to end. It's not going to work out. She's like, oh, okay. She got engaged to the guy. Right? And she came to me again and she was all like, I got engaged to him, like we're together, we're going to get married and all the rest of it. I was like, okay, and your cards are still saying, no, stay away. She comes back, they are broken up because he cheated on her. And now she's getting married, like I said, but to somebody else. So, and you think, I was right all along, for God's sake.
I remember as well, where we did a tarot read, Claire, you did a tarot read for me in the flat. And I remember you saying to me, February, blonde lady I was going to meet. Then I met Carmen and I was like, oh, well, this isn't a blonde lady, you know, and had that whole experience with Carmen. But me and Meg actually like
met at that dance.
But after that, when we actually officially made you know, stamped it down as like we're in a relationship and like it was like really committed. That was like February, like, and she's blonde. So it took was years. That was years after. And I remember, and when you said February, I thought it was that February coming. Yeah, and but it's like it took probably like 3 years after that for I can attest to that. How do you know what I mean? And it was but at first I thought, oh, well, that's now one, bro. Now I met Carmen. It was all this crazy intense
drama
thing.
and stuff,
but it wasn't right, you know?
Seeing you come back around and I thinking, it's...
Do you find it easier or harder, or does it make no difference when you do readings for people that you know? For example, like Drew. Obviously, you know Drew, because obviously knowing Drew for a long time yourself, and also for the connection you have with Josh, who knows so much about Drew.
Yeah.
Do you find it easier, harder, or does it not make any difference than if it's like a complete random?
It doesn't make difference. Some people say, oh, well, you know them, so you're going to know everything. It's like, no, I'm like a fortune teller. They're not going to know their future. I know everything.
You're not saying like your mum's name's Karina.
Yeah.
No.
So
Imagine that.
It's about the unknown mystery, isn't it? You're talking about the unknown mystery.
You do a reading differently. So I wouldn't say to Drew, oh, I can hear the name Karina coming up. Yeah. I wouldn't be that stupid to say anything like that. No. So what I would do with Drew is more focus on maybe spirit coming through that have messages for his future instead, or anything he really needs to know that he doesn't know yet. So it's funny when people come to see me that know me and thought, oh, I thought you would tell me a load of stuff that you already knew. And they're like, it's completely different. I don't know any of that was going to happen. And then it happened. And yeah, so it can be like that. And I do it with Josh as well. Like I predicted stuff that was going to happen with his like dad's family and stuff before any of that like happened. Like
the Scottish stuff?
Yeah. Like I had
the Scottish stuff. I knew that you knew what I meant.
Yeah. Like like I had like a spirit come through, which I think was his granddad.
Called Angus.
Yeah. And funny enough, they kept giving me short A all the time. So they got a woman
Angus.
here. Yeah. They got a woman here. But I said it's really sad around it. It's like a really sad event. And Josh was like, I don't know. And I said, but it's connected to your dad. But I thought, I can't imagine his dad ever like getting upset about anything like that. Like a year went past, and then he found out about like his birth mum. Yeah. Who was called Anne. Oh. Right. And she had died. And I thought, how crazy is that? Because Josh didn't know anything about the family at all.
No, of course not.
And we knew his granddad that came through in spirit.
Just knew that obviously his dad was adopted. That's all.
Yeah. And that's all I knew. And then that came through, and he was like, oh my God, like it's like really strange, like how you would know that stuff. So I never, like some mediums you go to, they'll fish constantly and they'll ask you questions like, oh, what was their name? Or like, how tall were they? Whatever. And I've never, ever done that ever. Like I just see what I see and that's it. If it's not there, it's not there. If it's there, it's there. And that's for someone I know, someone I don't know. They work the same, but I tweak it a little bit. Just I wouldn't say Drew's mum's name or things like that. Like if I was doing a reading, or if he was going through relationship issues or anything like that, like I would say, oh, I know that's happening, but this is going to change soon, and you're going to go that way instead, and
So you're savvy, basically.
Yeah.
You're savvy with how you word things and things like that.
Yeah, like
you put a lot of care into that.
Yeah, like I put a lot of care into that, and I just don't mess around. Like some just make it complicated and make themselves silly.
I think that's really good though, not to mess around. I think you just try and give as clear the message as possible.
Yeah, and if you take it, you take it. If you don't, you don't. But the thing, a lot of people write it down or they record it on their phones with me, so they can go back over it. So if at the time it doesn't make any sense, or they feel like, I don't think that's ever going to happen, they can go back onto it and go, right.
Put a 5-year timestamp on it. Like, it's going to be within that time.
Yeah, so and I do it for myself as well. I read myself sometimes, not always with spirit, but I'll just do cards or some more psychic energy.
Is that harder to do?
It can. The only hard thing about it is you don't always believe what you're doing for yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you think, oh, you're probably lying to me. So, like, because spirits do lie as well.
What do you think the agenda is for that?
I guess, again, it can sometimes be personal gain as well. You think, like, am I doing this for personal gain? So that's why sometimes I'll see other mediums. Right. Just to back up what I've done. Just to say, was that correct that they're telling me? They're not messing that up because of, personal gain. And like, no, that's fine, that's correct. And, or they'll tell me things without me telling them anything. And I sort it out that way. But yeah, so you can read anyone or anything. Really.
In terms of obviously, like, you are psychic. Obviously, I'm a layman with all these things. So if anything that sounds funny to you, then obviously that's fine. Like if somebody else is psychic as well, do you sometimes like, could you theoretically, do you think, almost like have like a mental conversation with that person? Or have you ever had any experiences with anything like that? Because that's really fascinating for me to conceive.
Like telepathy.
Yeah.
Not necessarily telepathy, but you can read them a lot easier.
Right.
Like, so.
But you've never like been looking at somebody in the eyes and you've heard them say like,
"Hello, Claire."
Yeah, almost a bit like that. Like,
no, not always with, like, just with psychics, but you can do it with other people as well.
Like, so like, if I, do you think that if I like try to, I'm not saying necessarily that, you know, this could happen, but do you think there is like a chance if I really tried to tell you something, like looking at you with a lot of intent, that you could pick up a bit on something? Sometimes,
yeah. Like, and other people, like, I'll say something like, I was just going to say that. Yeah. Like, or like we like do each other's like sentences and things like that. It's me
and Josh and Drew will do that with each other a lot. And obviously we've known each other for a very long time. Do you think that is almost like some weird thing about just getting in sync with each other?
It can be, and it can be your energies like going off of each other.
Right.
So yeah, you can do that as a psychic as well.
Merging aurically.
Because we do it all the time. And me and Josh do it all the time, and I'm sure you and Josh do it with each other as well.
Yeah.
I just think that's very interesting because it's happening. You think sort of like, what's going on here? But it happens like, when you get into almost like a flow with it, it can happen chronically.
It's hilarious when it does as well.
And it can happen like multiple times in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. I was only thinking about it the other day actually, because twins can do that.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and like me and my sister do that quite a lot.
You and your sister are very close, aren't you?
Yeah, so yeah, we do it, and I think that's really strange. But then I started doing it with clients as well, and I thought, I can read you, or I can tell if someone's like thinking in their head, or they're an idiot or whatever. Like, so I can sometimes be quite pessimistic around people because I'm like, I know they're actually thinking that, and then I realise that they are, and so. Yeah, you can read people like that.
That's really interesting.
It's mad. Like, we only, I don't know what the percentage is, but isn't it like 0.05% of the actual light field we can actually see with our eyes? So there is all this whole spectrum of everything that we, you know. Yeah. And it's almost like there will be, we will be able to read it more when technology gets better, to be actually, you know, the minutia of frequencies and things like that. It'll be interesting. It's like it's a mystery now, but it might, you know, we might understand more about it.
One thing that I've always I don't know where it comes from, Claire. It might even be like a really innocent thing, like I just know what you do for a living. But one thing, because I'm like a very emotional person, so I think, you know, obviously, again, you are, Drew. I think
can be my detriment sometimes.
Yeah, well, maybe both of us, and I think it can be a strength and a weakness. But I'm like super emotionally charged at all times. But obviously, it's very important to be in control, isn't it? But it's really funny because whenever I've been around you in the past, and I said I don't know if it's like something I'm feeling, or if it's something that I just maybe am conscious of because of the fact that I know like what you do and stuff like that. But I always am like conscious of you like picking up on my emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people get that with me as well. They're like, you can see my soul, like you can see like, my emotions with me. I can tell if someone's sad or
I
happy
feel like
about
that with
something. And I'm definitely more in tune, like, and you'll get it.
Apologies.
Funerals are the worst though. Like, you know, you see someone sad, and like sometimes, you know, you know, like a wall or whatever, and then other times you can really feel like they're, because some people just cry for the sake of crying. And then other people
are obviously really trying deep. Not to. Sort of.
Yeah, and you can feel the ones that are really trying not to, or like proper sorry. Like I had that recently with a friend's funeral, where I just felt so depressed.
Really?
Like it was depressing anyway, but I was just feeding off that energy. Like it was, I couldn't even go near. Like it just felt with their children. Like it was too intense for me, and you know, it just felt like my head was going to explode. Yeah, it was that bad, and you get that in normal everyday stuff as well.
It's interesting though, because what we were saying about, you know, some people can be like Debbie Downers, and other people bring like a lot of positivity and light into a room. Like I feel like with you, you're like very like just completely neutral.
Yeah.
Do you think that is just because almost like your purpose in life is to be like a receiver of these things rather than an influencer?
Yeah. I'm not like over the top. I would say I'm not overly like a loud person. I'm not too quiet now, but just kind of like I'm not very emotional, like and never cry in public or anything like that.
I feel like you're like quite stealthy.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Like anyone can say.
But I mean like mentally as well as just not just like necessarily physically. Like
I am. In an old job I used to do, they used to call me the wall.
Yeah,
because like they'd say, "Oh God, like she's not going to react to that," or like she's going to be like, I could say anything and it would just be like, you're not going to read my emotions.
Yeah, it's quite hard to read you. Like I feel like some people, it's very obvious to sort of like, you know, almost like figure out what like they're thinking or what they're going to say, whereas it's very hard to do that.
I don't know if I do it because I can read people so well that I feel like, I used to think everyone else can read me. I don't want them to read me, so I'm like, close.
I think some of those experiences as well, like seeing spirits and things like that, like that, knowing that you've got to turn that off sometimes, or you've got to be in control of it. That's almost like a fortitude that you create in yourself to like be able to control that. And I think that could kind of like tap into like the emotional side of things as well, because it's almost like the same power. It's like this thing that's like, you can't help sometimes, but you can be in control of it a bit more. Like, you know,
like when I read people, you'll have someone in front of me crying their eyes out, very, very sad, like someone's passed away, and I'm just there going, like, just does it. But it's not me. And some people actually like that because they feel like she's not embarrassed or like cringed out by me doing
I think that's
that.
really important, isn't it?
I always try and be like the wall with that and just be like, no, we're carrying on. It's normal to cry, it's normal to do those things, but I won't, because I'm like trying to be professional and everything. I know, and I'm saying it is sad, but I will carry on as normal and not make you feel guilty or weird like for crying. And so I'll never cry if somebody else is crying, like in a reading ever. I've never ever done that. Like, it feels sad, but you just like,
I gotta watch it. If I get a whiff of someone going, I'll go start going.
You're like with movies and stuff. You're a crier, aren't you?
Oh mate, or you like adverts or sad things and that. It just like goes right through me, and I'm like, whoa.
Maybe that's why I do this job, because if you were doing my job and you were doing that, you wouldn't be able to carry on with a reading.
You wouldn't be able to hold a space for that.
No, and so that's probably why I've been given this gift, because like, she's hard, she'll do it. She'll be fine. Like, she won't break down over it.
Mentally tough. Mentally tough. So like going back, so you know, you left Haygrove. It was Haygrove you went to, wasn't it? Yeah, just checking. So you started getting into your tarot and stuff. So so take us a bit more on your development. So you got into tarot.
Then I went into radio and stuff after college. And then it was kind of
so were you practicing the whole time?
Yeah, practicing the whole time. And then I started joining circles.
And were you still having like experiences daily?
Yeah. And then I joined a circle doing tarot, learning and everything. And I was put on the spot all the time. And she was like, you've got the gift, the spirit, as well as psychically. Okay. Tell people stuff. Like, would show me up in front of everyone and say, right, tell me about them.
So you were almost like the chosen.
That's amazing, like having like a mentor.
That's reminding me a bit of like The Witcher.
Master
really scary.
You know, with like Yennefer in The Witcher.
Oh yeah.
It backfired on them once though. Like, she was being a bit smart, and she said, right, go around in a circle, and Claire, you go first and tell this woman what's going on behind her spiritually. And I was like, to be fair, I said, I've got a really bad headache. I said, someone's like pointing a gun to my head, and they keep going bang, 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 like that all the time. All of a sudden, this woman got up with her friend, burst into tears, ran out the room, hysterical. And I was like, oh my God, I want that.
What's
like
happened?
Bad.
Yeah.
And she was like, her dad shot himself in the head. And I was like, oh my God. That's when I thought, right, I'm going to do this as a job.
Right, I see.
Whoa.
That because I was getting stuff right consistently, even though she's been really hard on me.
Obviously not even when you realised that you were, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I thought, I could do this. So I was doing it more then for other people. So friends would then I started having little business cards, and
you're building a reputation.
Yeah, so I started doing it like just in the evenings, like for an hour or whatever. And then it just built up, did little parties, and I said it was just tarot or just the odd psychic thing. Built it up. Still, then I went into work, so I was doing like the admin job in the day and everything. Built up through word of mouth. Didn't have a Facebook, didn't have an Instagram, didn't have a nothing. So it was all just word of mouth. And then I was like, I think I need to do this full time now. Like it was just too much for me. So so then I set up all my social stuff and like did that, because it was just getting stronger and stronger. So that was 2006, 2007, I left work.
I was going to say, because as long as I've known you, it's been like, you know, sort of a key...
2016, I meant,
point
17,
a key point of your sort of personality, isn't
it? So I never really told anyone about it. So I've even had like friends come back to me like, I never knew you were a psychic. I would hide it as very, very secretive. Or they get people like going up to them going, oh, I saw your mate Claire. She did a reading for me. They're like, she doesn't do readings. That's not my friend. Like at work, no one knew. No one knew at all that I did readings. When they were doing overtime and stuff, I was like, I can't do overtime. They're like, well, and I was like, oh, I'm doing stuff with Josh. But actually,
were you consciously secretive about that? Like, did you just make the decision?
I didn't want people to interfere with it.
Right.
And I don't want people to be negative about it and be like, well, that's a load of rubbish. I don't want, like, why are you doing
You just
that
didn't
for?
want any, whether it be positive or negative.
And if I didn't want to do
attention.
it anymore, I don't
Right.
want people to be like, like, you know.
That didn't work
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So I've wanted to be 110% sure that is actually what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Built the client base up, and I didn't want that negativity around it.
Does
like,
it bother you, like the stigma of it at all? Like, if you're ever around people, because let's face it, there are going to be people that will probably flat out just be like, yeah, almost like negative about what you do. Does that bother you?
Sometimes, yeah.
I guess it depends whether they're rude about it or not.
Because I'm not rude about things with people.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't believe in something, I'd never got to go, oh, well, you're an idiot for liking that. You know, people.
There's
can
ways
like
to go
what they
about
wanna
things,
like.
aren't there? Yeah.
And if I don't believe in it, then I wouldn't comment on it because it's not my business to. It's their life. They can do what they want to do. And I feel like people do the same with me, but they're not obviously going to.
Yeah.
So sometimes you kind of like, well, I do have that kind of attitude. Well, you're going to come crawl into my door at some point. And they usually do.
Yeah.
So that can happen. And it's usually the same types. It can be like, you know, middle-aged people usually that are like, oh, I don't believe in that rubbish. Like, you know, typical like lads. But then I get a lot of men come to me, like work on building sites and things like that absolutely love it, obsessed with it. So everyone's different. But yeah, like negative type of stuff, like I don't really like, but because it's like, see it before you kind of like, you know, comment
Is
on
it quite weird to have to almost dance around that with people not like believing you, whereas you almost have to accept not accept their closed-mindedness, but almost understand it in a way, whereas even though to you that is, you know, the truth that you live through, and that is 100% certified.
Yeah, like I'd never say believe in what I believe in, because I don't care about that. If you believe in it, you do. If you don't, you don't. I don't care at all.
Got to be sure about yourself.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just sometimes with people, I just don't say anything at all. Like if people ask me, well, what do you do for a living? But you can tell they're open.
Yeah.
I engage, and then sometimes with people, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to talk about what I do. I'm like, I work from home.
Yeah, that's totally respectable. Like,
if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
There was a part of me that, like, having this conversation, hearing you say about that is making me think that that's like more okay than what I thought before, which is like be 100% open and honest all the time about like everything and be, you know. But there is a time and a place. There's a time and a place to say things or not say things, and to keep some things close to your chest, and that will be beneficial for you. But do you know what I mean? Like I had this idea in my head that it should always just be open, but a lot of the time it can't be, because you will be met with certain things that will be more of an issue. It's just easier sometimes to just like, you know,
it's just not worth the
engage in it.
hassle
No.
like with some people. And I
that's
think,
okay.
what are we going to get out of this if I tell you what I do? Because I know you're going to be an idiot about it.
Yeah, and I don't want to be in that energy. So let's just get on with.
And then other people you tell. And you think, why did I tell you that? Because then they will not stop going on about it. And then they're like, I believe in spirits too. Oh my God, can you tell me what's behind me? Can you tell me this? Can you tell me that? And I'm like, oh God, like, just be normal about it. Or like, you know, like Nathaniel, for instance, you know, he knows what I do, but you're very casual about it. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And that reaction, I, you know, find okay. Like you haven't had a reading with me yet.
Very similar to Josh in that
open
respect, I think, Nathaniel is, isn't he?
Yeah, like it was surprised with Josh, like, you know, when you're meeting someone for the first time and they're like, well, what do you do? And I just said to him, I work in an office, which I did at the time.
Yeah.
And then and then I was like, oh, I also do readings for people as well. And he was like, oh, cool, yeah, whatever. Like, Josh is just so in his own world that he doesn't know what's going on. Like,
so
literally, I could be a serial killer on the side, and he'd be like, cool, that's nice. Yeah, nice one.
Do you know what? I'm really in the mood for a Domino's. That's what Josh is thinking.
But that's the type of person you know, that I should have been with. It's easy. Like, and he'll say, well, how was your day? And I'll tell him about people, but it will be normally about the normal type of stuff that I've had to deal with them, rather than like, you know, Jeff the spirit came through or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, he doesn't mind. He's really, really relaxed about it. And you do get that with some people. They're relaxed, or like some of my friends don't believe in spirits at all.
Right.
They don't believe in any of it, but they're respectful.
Yeah,
they're just like, yeah, that's really how they always ask how business is going. Like, how's business? They care about the money, not the spirits, or like how many clients you've had in like today. So you get those types of people, that my friends, and you know the other types of friends that I've got that just won't talk about spirits, or you know.
It's interesting. I mean, we talked about this on Pandoras Box before, but because as I said, I was always really interested in like the supernatural and the paranormal growing up, and then when I got into my 20s. I got very much into science, and for a while I thought those two things sort of conflicted. But as I've talked about in depth with these guys before, I got to a stage and I realized that actually it's like they don't conflict at all. Like one of the basic principles of science of like physics is that you can't get something out of like nothing, for example. But obviously, like there are a lot of scientific principles which leave you with far more questions than answers. Yeah. And there's only so much, like, that I really believe in that saying, like truth is stranger than fiction. Like there's far more that we don't know than there is things that we know. And I think that there will be always, because I think there is almost like
so much mystery to the world.
There is far more. The human brain can't comprehend even like 1% of all truth. Do you know what I mean? So it's like obviously I think it's really good that as humankind we're trying to explain as much as possible and figure out as much as possible. But regardless, if we figure out 1,000,000 times more about science than we do right now, there'll still be 1,000,000,000 times more we don't know.
Yeah.
So I think and I think it's cool. I think once you come to that realization, it opens yourself up to be extremely open-minded about things. Yeah. And as I said, I think it's good to have a healthy skepticism and to question things. And I think sometimes you can even tell it's making people uncomfortable. But as long as you're doing it in a respectful way.
Yeah, and I do. And I never preach to people. You get that sometimes with certain religions. They'll preach to you like, you must believe in Jesus. Or you must believe. And I never
or
preach to people. Or
almost in extreme examples, like you should be punished if you don't.
Yeah, like you'll be punished. And I'm like, if you believe in it, then great. And
I believe.
I
believe in God.
I love Jesus.
That's Tenacious D shout out.
Yeah, it's just, I'm just always respectful, and, I never push it onto people. If they want to have a reading with me, then they come to me. Yeah. I advertise on my site and everything like that, but that is me just advertising it. I don't go, you must have a reading. I would never DM someone and go, look, so-and-so's come through. I don't care. I'm not going to do that. Like, if you want to come and see me, come and see me.
Like spamming or whatever.
Don't. And that's also to do with spirit as well. If they want to see you, they'll make it happen. That is not my job to go out and push my cards on people in the street. I would never do that ever. So
yeah.
It's amazing being able to like start from word of mouth, and so naturally it gives you like, it's great. You don't have to do that. And I was getting this thing of like, when you like follow your heart with something, it is going to work out. And creating a business out of those models rather than having to like have all this marketing and like just trusting in the gift, trusting in what your principles are, and trusting that what will come to you is meant to come to you. And I think it's amazing. I wish all business was like that, really. Like,
talking of business, it's interesting. I just opened up my notes because there were a couple of things, because I know what I'm like. I thought I've made a couple of notes over the last like week, to things to ask you. I thought it'd be interesting. Like, and as I said, I don't expect you to know necessarily any of these answers. I'm just interested in your opinions. All right. It's like, do you think like certain people in power or institutions perform like rituals to try and solidify or get into power?
Oh,
things like that.
Good question.
Yeah, they can do.
Yeah?
Yeah. You get.
So you think that is like a thing?
Yeah.
That is a thing.
Yeah. You see it a lot. Look, there's a lot of people that have been in power in the world like over the years and stuff like that, and they've, dabbled with things to get where they are.
And what do you think they're exactly like invoking? Like when that's happening, like what's going on? Always
something really bad. It can be something good. It's usually wealth a lot of the time. They're invoking, spirit to get them higher up quicker. Right. It's the quickness of it. Like some people don't want to wait around for years and years and years to get where they are. So they'll use outside forces to do that, which can be spiritual or demonic.
Right.
So that's why a lot of powerful people sometimes use psychics.
So one thing I thought I'd ask you about, because the story's interested me for a long time, partly because of it's a really interesting story, partly because obviously one of my first loves is music, and I know it was you as well. Do you know about Robert Johnson?
No.
So Robert Johnson is
blues man.
Sort of is one of the best blues player of all time. But one of the things that's interesting about Robert Johnson is apparently he was awful. So he was like, I think he lived in Tennessee, might have been Texas, but anyway. He was like awful player, singer, songwriter, like would be like literally almost like booed off stage. And he disappeared for a year.
Yeah.
And this is all 100% true. And he disappeared for like a year, and he came back. And when he came back, he was like the best blues player ever. So he like was an amazing guitar player, amazing singer, and amazing songwriter. And he wrote several songs like Crossroad Blues, Sold My Soul to the Devil, things like that. And it were like sad songs almost about how he done like done like dodgy packs essentially.
Whoa.
And the sort of the story arose that there was this crossroads. I don't know if this has any credence, but I guess the idea is, from what I'm aware, is that some, I don't know if you call them like tweens or like some areas where paths cross over have like charged energy.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
things like that.
Yeah.
And he sold his soul to the crossroads demon. That's what he basically said. So he buried something at the crossroads that made obviously this thing, it invoked this thing. And then he basically traded his soul to be the best blues player of all time. Mm-hmm. And what's creepy as well, there's almost like something a little bit off about him. Like you can see black and white pictures of him, and you can listen to his music. It's really interesting. If you listen to like Crossroad Blues and stuff, it's obviously fascinating to listen to, almost as like a case study, into like a man's journey, or like a potentially like paranormal a man's journey into the paranormal, or of doing something really, crazy to try and attain like, to be such an amazing musician or something. But even he looks a little bit creepy, like in his pictures. But you can tell there's almost like a level of regret,
is there? There's like probably about 5 pictures. I'll get up some pictures for
people.
They're freaky.
Okay, so if people look on YouTube or Spotify, we put it out.
Oh, we won't be able to because all 4 cameras are into this now.
Can I stop for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
And go to the
Yeah, go ahead. We'll just chat amongst ourselves.
Take a break.
Yeah, no worries, Chief. Yeah, so Robert Johnson. I always thought that was a really so Robert Johnson. Robert Penis, big Barbie penis. I always thought that was no disrespect, Robert Johnson. While you are burning in the blazing infernos of hell. No, I hope not. Obviously, I sincerely hope not. But like, what do you think about like sort of like that story? And things like that, like just in general.
Yeah, like. Definitely true.
Yeah. So you think that's very much like something that could be done?
Whoa.
Yeah, like you get it with like things like the Masons and stuff like that too, where they do rituals and then they go up the ladder and all of that. Like it is to get things done quicker, and you can kind of do it with spirit a little bit, like with the manifesting that I was on about earlier. I do like the light version, where some people will like go to a crossroads of like, because the crossroad thing as well. They used to do that in the old days. So if you like killed yourself, or
they often would have things like Iron Maidens and stuff. At crossroads,
so you'd be buried underneath the crossroads. So that's witchy people love it.
So what's the point of doing that? What's the idea behind that?
Because it's that limbo thing. So so you're not allowed to go to the other side. So you won't be picked up. So if you're in the middle of the road in the crossroads, you won't be picked up. So your energy's there pulsating. So some people go towards it and do. All
it's almost. Do you see it almost as like So it can stop people from moving on to the other side, but it can also be used as like maybe a portal, like a way of entry for maybe some other like entities, things like that. So that's why like someone like Robert Johnson would go to the crossroads specifically.
Yeah.
Makes me almost like wonder like what that guy's story was. Like, how did he even find that out?
Yeah. Is it the case with any crossroads that you come across?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah. We got them here in Somerset. We're near the Quantocks. There's a few there. One of my relatives was buried there because she done that to herself, and she was put there. And my mum always says, you should go and try and dig it up. And I was like, I'm not going to dig a body up in the middle of the crossroads.
Just there, I was driving past, like on the way home after a hike, and Claire's just there.
It's like, I don't think necessarily for me they're bad at all. To be fair, because every time I've driven past or gone around them, they seem quite peaceful.
What, the crossroads?
Yeah.
Where were you on about in the Quantocks?
Oh God, where is it?
Sorry to put you on the spot. Like roughly? Can you say like roughly?
Near Spaxton Way, there's one.
Right.
I know. Do you know like as you're like the Minehead Road, and then you go, there's the Cottage Pub. Like, you know, there's that pub on the right there, and you go left down there, and you go forward, and you come to a crossroads, and you can go over to go to like Ramscombe and stuff, or you go left to Tristram.
It's there. That's the crossroads.
There's probably a load of dead bodies under there. So
interesting.
That's what they said. And I've got like the records and stuff that she was actually put there. They wouldn't bury her in the church.
I know that it's obviously Dead Woman's Ditches up by there as well, and it's not very far at all, is it? I mean, it's probably like half a kilometre from there or something. And I know people obviously had some pretty crazy supernatural experiences around there, including my parents. One of my dad's best friend, Andy Lauder, he lived in Crocombe, and it's really weird. So it was quite common for them to do the trip sort of like from Crocombe, like back more like towards Wemden way, and where my dad lived. And obviously they made the trip like 1,000 times, and 999 times it was like absolutely normal. Yeah. But then like one time they were going up, and it's apparently my mum and dad didn't talk to each other about it at the time. But my mum said that she just had this like feeling of like insane terror like wash over her, unbeknownst to her, like my dad did as well. And my dad said he also felt the feeling that something was pulling the steering wheel like really hard to the right to try and make him crash the car. Now my dad was like a really big bloke, rugby player and stuff, like a lot stronger than the average person. So like he said that he managed to just about keep it, level. But he said he had to put like all of his strength into it.
Whoa.
And he was like feeling like insane terror as well. And my mum said that she didn't even say anything, but she actually like locked obviously this is like manual car, so you'd like have like a physical lock. So she even like put the little lock down because she said she was just feeling so afraid. And apparently as they came up the Crocombe Hill and then started coming down the other side more towards Stowey, over Stowey, suddenly my mum was like, oh no, sorry, I think my dad was like, oh, I'm so glad we've passed there. And my mum said like, why? And he was like, because I just freaking for some reason felt like terrified when I was like coming up Crocombe Hill and like felt this something pulling the steering wheel. My mum was like, oh my god, like I was like feeling in like the most like insane terror as well. So I thought that was like quite interesting. Like I wonder what was sort of like going on there. Like, do you have any sort of theories about that? Like,
well, I've got a connection to that. Actually, a little secret of that. So I'm a related to, I think it's John Wolford. So the guy that killed, why people called it Dead Woman's Ditch. Mm-hmm. He was the one that killed the lady that was there, and he was put on the gibbet there. So up on the top. Yes. That's why he called Wolford Cross. Right. It's my ancestral monument. Right. So yeah, he's like one of my great uncles or something like that.
The man that killed the dead woman, the lady, of Dead Woman's Ditch.
That is my relative. They got the handcuffs in the museum in Bridgewater, and me and Josh were looking at them, and the guy was like, oh yeah, that's John, like, him, he done that. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm related to him. He's like, yeah, that's my relative. Wow. But they're all mystical on that side of the family. Like on my dad's side, like they were all into kind of not like, satanic rituals or anything like that, but like, like gypsy magic and fortune telling and psychic things like that. So I always find it funny whenever we go near that area. I'm always like, wave. I'm like,
I mean, as I said, like obviously, there's a level of guesswork, I imagine. Yeah. Like, what can you like theorize that you think was going on that night that wasn't going on all the other times that they were going over up Crocombe Hill? Like,
it might just be that they hit it again at the wrong time. So it could be as they were passing through. Like sometimes spirits get distracted by other things. So someone there could have been with somebody else or me or whatever that day, and then at that point he was probably there and then thinking, I'm going to play him up. Right. I'm going to play this person. I won't kill them, but I'll play them up. So yeah, they'll hold this. That's what spirits do sometimes. They'll cheekily do things like hold the steering wheel and pull it, or like try and push people down the stairs is a big thing that I get all the time in readings.
Yeah. It's funny because I heard my dad tell that story. My mum and dad tell that story when I was like fairly young, and for a long time that was a unique story in terms of my old man saying about pulling the steering wheel. But actually, it was only about a year or two ago. I was reading a story, not so much a story. Well, I guess it's a story. Have you ever heard of the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor?
No, I haven't.
There's a spirit apparently in Dartmoor, and people call it the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor. And it went through, I think it was like, I don't know what this is. It's like, it seems to go through almost like stages, but I went through a stage of, I think, about 20 years where it was like fairly common if you were driving at night on Dartmoor on this certain road that people would say that they physically saw hairy hands, but like not attached to a body, appear on their steering wheel and then try and make them veer off the road. And a lot of people crashed their cars. Some people even died, and some people didn't crash but managed to resist. Some of the people that did crash were obviously like, yeah, man, I was like, freaking, I was literally, these hairy hands appeared, pulled the car off the road and I freaking crashed. And they're like cars like totaled, or they were like in hospital and stuff. And they were like, yeah, it's called the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor. I thought it was an interesting, but I thought obviously as soon as I read that, I was like, that's pretty much what my old man said. He didn't say that anything physically appeared, but it was the same in terms of like turning
the energy. Yeah, you can feel their energy quite, like what we were saying about the bruising and the pinching and that. It's similar.
Quite malicious though, isn't it, to try and make you crush your car?
Yeah, they can do that. Yeah, a lot for people. Yeah, and push
naughty
down
that.
The
way you said,
very naughty, mate. Very naughty.
The way you said that they almost like the spirit maybe in your theory of it would have been that it wasn't actually trying to kill. that day. Do you think that the spirit would have been strong enough that if it wanted to, it could have fully swerved the car?
Yeah, it could have done it a little bit more and probably done it. But it depends. Yeah, like so if it was like a murderous spirit, then probably would have done that. If it was a good spirit, then no, they would have been told off and told no.
Stop being naughty.
Yeah, stop being naughty. You're not allowed to do that.
It's a bit like when you prank your mate. You don't actually really want to hurt him. It's just funny to you.
Yeah. But
yeah.
it could have just been that. It could have just been like a prank type thing.
Yeah.
And scared the hell out of your dad. Maybe. Oh my god.
But I remember that really like stuck with them to this day. Do you know what I mean? Like you know when like you can tell when someone's recounting a story that they're a bit like, man, it's like it was like a heavy experience at the time.
Yeah, you do get them.
Especially because I think I did take them like through them a little bit because they had made the journey so often, and obviously usually it was just like a real nice chill journey, like riding across the Quantocks, and it's always in the back of my mind a little bit when I'm going up Crocombe Hill because I live nearby, like in Stagursey, so I like do make that drive like fairly regularly, like. But yeah, it's always in the back of my mind. But yeah. So like, I suppose we've got to go back a little bit. So when you started doing your tarot cards, actually no, are we pretty much up to date now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty much up to date. Right. Okay. So now I guess it's more just like general questions.
Listing them off.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So I said to you earlier on. I know that Drew's got a couple of little stories as well. So I said earlier on I've like experienced like sleep paralysis a couple of times, and obviously that can technically be explained by science. There is apparently something that goes on. So the idea for people that don't know is there's this weird thing that happens sometimes, and apparently like we take it for granted, but obviously the process of falling asleep and waking up is apparently very, very complicated, like neurologically
and chemically in your body and everything.
Yeah, it's a very like process, very complicated neurological process. And one of the things that makes us dream is when we are asleep, our brain is flooded with the chemical DMT. And people might have heard of DMT from things like ayahuasca and stuff, but our brain secretes DMT. So you could actually never fail a drug test if you didn't take in DMT. A little hint for anybody that wants to get high. Yeah, apparently one of the things that can happen is, and I've heard it a little bit like the analogy of like when your computer suddenly needs to reboot or something. Like every now and again, and some people it's more common than others, apparently, like in the process of waking up, your brain suddenly like there's like a error. So you're almost like your brain's stuck somewhere between being awake and being asleep.
Where your consciousness is there, but your body doesn't wake up.
Your eyes are open, but your body, and a lot of people don't realise this, and I think we don't necessarily think it's the case because we do toss and turn a little bit in the night, but we actually wake up ever so slightly to toss and turn. That's why usually if you feel like you've had a very good sleep, if you wake up and you're probably in the same position when you fell asleep in, you probably feel like you've had a very good sleep. And that's because that's because when you fall asleep, your body actually slightly paralyzes you for safety reasons. It's a leftover thing of
it's
a leftover thing of when we lived in trees, because if you were moving around when you were asleep as you were an ape in a tree, you would fall out and die or break bones. So we've still got that. I woke up and I was like paralyzed, and I guess the scientific explanation is my brain was being flooded with DMT, so I was having hallucinations. But I guess what science doesn't explain is people that suffer from sleep paralysis, and I've heard that some people suffer from it every day.
This is what I wanted to add. Since we spoke about it ages ago on the pod, my ex-girlfriend at the time, I remember speaking to her loads about it when we were talking about it, because I found it really interesting.
I remember you telling me that you did, yeah.
A week or so after, may have even been that week, she got it for the first ever time.
Wow.
Got it again the week after.
Wow.
And I think there was sort of a period where she didn't have it or something, but she was saying the other day, because everyone's back from uni, came to my house, and she was saying she gets it all the time now.
Serious?
All the time.
Yeah, so
Crazy.
One thing that's really interesting, and I don't know exactly what she told you about her personal experiences, Bullwinkle, but we even get the term nightmare apparently from sleep paralysis. So the term nightmare, which obviously we just take for granted, it's just like a word in our vocabulary. So it came originally from you'd be visited by the nightmare, like the mare of the night. So it's really common for people often to experience what they would describe as almost like a decrepit, stereotypical like evil witchy looking woman. That's where a mare comes from. Either that or almost what people would often describe as like a devilish looking character.
That's the one that she gets, apparently.
Yeah. And apparently there's another one. There's one other common one.
The Inspector.
Yes.
That one, right? Yeah.
Where people often say they almost like see somebody that's almost like in almost like an Inspector Gadget. You know, you think of that Inspector Gadget, like a long cream coat and like a cream hat. Like you'd almost think like a 1980s detective. Like, and it's these three entities, and with me, the first time it was that hag, it was that nightmare sort of thing. Both equally terrifying, I would say. And the second one, it was more like a demonic entity again. It was like a humanoid, different looking than my poo demon story. Because I said the first one, I don't know if it's my memory's corrupted, but the first one, as I said, it almost looked almost like what I imagine like Sauron. You know what Sauron looked a little bit like in Lord of the Rings movies, whereas the second one looked a bit more like a stereotypical like devil or demon. It was like more humanoid in terms of like it looked like the outline of a human, but I could see horns.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's crazy.
When you had sleep paralysis as well, did you feel any like vibrations in your body?
I was trying to move and I could feel myself trying to move.
Because
if you were bound,
I've only had it twice, and each time it happened to me, like, and which I've read is common as well. I didn't see anything as in any entities or anything like that. But I had like the most intense vibrations throughout my body. Like my body was literally getting like that.
I was making myself
but it was
vibrate.
sketchy. It was sketchy. So my body was doing that, and I remember the only way I could get out of it, I got out of it pretty like quickly, like and stuff, was by like clenching my fists and imagining my fists clenching, and then all of a sudden they did clench, and then I just snapped out of it.
I was helpless. So I was trying to regain control and trying to wake myself up. I remember the first time more clearly, which is weird because obviously it was for longer.
That was at your nan's house, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was at my grandparents' house in Wemden. I was on their sofa and I was probably 17 years old. I woke up in the middle of the night, really hot and sweating, but like unnaturally so. Started getting freaked out that I couldn't move, and then noticed that in like the corner of my eye. So like obviously I could move my eyes, but I couldn't move anything else. It looked like what I could make out was like this sort of almost like old haggish shape.
That's horrifying.
Almost like in like a. I can remember what she was wearing. It was almost like wearing like an old white nightie or something. Like you know, like a woman would wear to bed in like the 20s. But
didn't
like,
your dad used to get pulled out of the bed by like someone in like an old lady
in upstairs in the same house?
That is so weird.
So I saw her in the corner of my eye, and it was like she was like slowly creeping towards me, like really super slowly, and I could see her, and obviously I was getting more and more terrified and more flustered like that. She was getting closer, and I was sweating more and more. And I remember like I was like shaking, but it was where I was trying to move, but I couldn't move, so I could sort of clench my fists, and I was trying to lift my arms, obviously, to just like move my body, but I just flat out couldn't, and I felt this immense pressure pushing down on my chest. How
close did she get?
I think she got fairly close, and then I don't know if I almost like passed out from like exhaustion, or just like it was all just the moment was just too much for me, or if I just passed out or what, like my brain suddenly just managed to correct what was going on. But then it was almost just like I just passed out and then woke up and was like, but I was like fuck. I remember no seriously, like when I woke up I was like,
did you wake up long after that?
I think I woke up like very early morning. So the thing is, I have no idea what time it was when I woke up. The thing is, it would in those days. I doubt I even got in until like at least 2-3. So maybe I woke up at like 4:30. Like it was probably about to get light, but I know it wasn't light when I woke up. It was still like pitch black. But I could have only been asleep for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because when I woke up, it was like the sun was coming up. I remember that. I was up before my grandma comes down, and my grandma's the sort of person that wakes up at like 6:30 every day, naturally. Do you know what I mean? So it was early. And I remember I was like sitting there when my grandma came in. I was just sat on the sofa, and I was like, man, I've been like through like an ordeal, man.
Yeah,
I had like PTSD. I was like, man, that was like
PTS dream.
Yeah. At the time, I was like, that's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
I remember with Clares one. I can only remember one of her experiences. She told me.
Yeah.
But it was I think it may have been the first time she ever had it.
Yeah.
And she said she sort of woke up and it was, pitch black dark. And she thought that I had came into her house and was like pressing down on her chest. And she thought that
apparently that's a common thing that people feel, pressure on the chest.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently she gets that like a lot, is the pressure on the chest whenever she gets it. But this first time she thought it was me, and I just like turned up and whatever sat on her chest or was pushing down on her chest. But she came to the realization that whatever was there was not me and was rather like a demon that was like sat there. And she said she couldn't really, I guess similar to the way that you said with Poo Demon.
Yeah.
You couldn't quite make it out, but it was more of like a shadowy kind of figure, but you could kind of get the spikes and the demonness of it, but it communicated to her. And that was the bit that I always found extra terrifying, was that it was like... So
what did it communicate?
So it was like almost mocking her,
really?
And like saying that her family was like in danger and stuff, and like laughing at her. Whoa. And I remember when she said that, I was like, that's crazy. And I almost imagine it in this like deep demonic voice cackling at you, sounding your chest horrible.
So Claire, like what do you make of that? Like, what do you make of that?
A lot of people could call that a spiritual awakening.
Right.
So are we awakened to spirit or to like demonic behavior? Like a lot of people, sometimes if they get really down and stuff like that, they'll get things like that where they'll say, I'm gonna like kill your family, or something really bad's gonna happen to them, and then they'll get deeper and deeper and deeper. But there's a lady in America, I can't remember her name now, but she's a demon cleaner. And she deals with people like that.
Right.
So if they have things like that, she will go in and you have to lie on a table and she'll release it. And she can tell you exactly what's been happening without you even saying anything. And it's insane. So she'll know exactly what demon it is, where it's come from. And she said, yeah, it will make you have like sleep paralysis. It will make you have like nightmares. It'll push down your chest, like all things like that. And she'll get rid of it for you. So yeah, it can interrupt sleep for a lot of people that are not open.
Yeah.
More so than in your normal everyday life.
Yeah, it's interesting with mine. The first one, the hag, like that I can't remember that any like communication. It was more just the feeling of dread as she was slowly creeping towards me. But the second one, I did get some communication from that. That one was taunting me, saying that like, and what it was saying was, it was saying that I think I'm in control because I'm aware that I'm physically strong in the real world, but it was basically saying like you have no power here.
Yeah.
And it was basically saying like you can't do anything in this moment. Like I'm in complete control of you.
Yeah.
And that was obviously very disconcerting to me.
It's crazy that it's that same like feeling of the demon one once again, but it's like taunting you.
Yeah.
That was
Christmas Eve, so that sucked.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I woke up on Christmas Day.
That was Krampus. That's what that was.
I was really tired, obviously, as you can imagine, because that was not a relaxing sleep. And yeah, Krampus, yeah. And I was just like really like just almost like a bit traumatized until about like, well, especially up until about midday. Do you know what I mean? But like, obviously not exactly like fine after that either. But yeah, so that's interesting. So you would say that? So some people would call that a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, it can be. Like some people think, oh, it's an amazing like butterflies and flowers, like spiritually, but it isn't always for some people. It can be dread, doom and gloom.
And when you say like awakening, like what do you even mean?
It just means you're more open. So it can mean you're...
So that's like a catalyst for something.
Yeah, something else. Usually as well, I say to people, because some people, clients of mine will come to me, they've had that or bad dreams and think, are these bad things going to happen to me? And I'm like, oh no, not you. It'd be for them over there. So sometimes you can be very predictory. Like you predict things for other people through that as well. So sometimes people might notice something go wrong for someone else a couple of days or weeks down the line.
Right.
That type of thing.
Do you know what? This is just like quite interesting. Obviously, this is just a complete theory of mine. But the second time, I was in bed with my then girlfriend, and I even was thinking the other day actually about how I don't know. I sort of feel a bit bad for her in a way. I feel like I feel like things probably aren't going great for her in her life. But also, if I'm being honest, I feel like she's brought a lot of it on herself, and I just made me think, and obviously this is a complete theory, maybe it had nothing to do with her, but maybe it was actually more to do with her than me, I don't know.
Yeah,
it just made me think of, because what you were saying, you know?
It can be, like, it's the thing, when things go wrong, you always blame yourself first, like when it's to do with like bad spirits, whatever, and like, no, actually sometimes it's to do with other people, it's not always to do with you, like bad dreams, so, like sometimes I'll have dreams about death and things like that, and it's always for somebody else, or if there's anything negative coming up, or if someone's lying to me in a dream, it's for someone else, and you hear news about it later on. It isn't always about the person. Or they could be.
That's
bringing
interesting.
In
That's really interesting. Oh,
maybe it was a bad sign that Clara's demon was originally me. Yeah. Maybe that was actually like coming from me somehow.
Yeah.
Mate, that's pretty. Mate, hope not, Bullwinkle.
That's dark.
Poor baby Blues over it.
Maybe she's the demon.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
I've got one thing more I want to tell Claire, and then I'll open up the forum. Right. This is. I always thought this was a pretty crazy story, Claire. I don't know what you'll make of this. But when my parents moved, obviously with me and my brother at the time, to West Huntsville, where they live now, when I was in 1998. And it was one of the first years that we were living there. I had a really bad nightmare one night. And the nightmare, though, it was in my house. So it wasn't too fanciful, other than the fact there was like a horror movie. But it was like, I was in my house, and in my dream, it was like the outside light, obviously like a sensor light that comes on if it detects something. It was like that had come on outside the front of my parents' house. And it was like I was in my parents' house and all the doors were locked and it was dark inside the house. But I was very much aware that there was something outside the house that wanted to come in. and in my nightmare, there was like a reptilian-looking humanoid that looked pretty terrifying. That was almost like pacing up and down outside my parents' house, almost like grinning at me in almost like quite a Darth Maulish type way. Like, you know, and obviously it was very terrifying.
Fuck that dream, man.
And it was like it wanted to, it was like it wanted to come in, and I don't feel like it could have came in, or maybe it was like taunting me. Maybe like it could have come in, but it was almost like the thrill of like, when am I gonna, or whatever, was more of a, I don't know. But it felt like in the dream, like I was terrified in the dream, but there was some sort of level of safety that I was in the house, and it was obviously outside the house. And there was nothing really that happened in the dream other than that. It was just this horrible nightmare, watching this reptilian-looking humanoid, like reptilian demon-y looking thing, just like pacing back and forth outside the front of my house, like gurning at me. And then that was it. And I woke up, horrible and obviously nightmare, always stuck with me. Never really thought, I didn't think more of it for years. Bear in mind, this happened when I was about 8, 9, maybe 10, right? And then about 5 years ago, right, my mum experiences night terrors. And there's definitely something a bit weird about my mum, and I mean that lovingly, but she's a very unique human being, and she used to read tarot cards and stuff when she was younger. But yeah, again, like a bit like what you were saying, like I didn't even know that she did until I was like a grown up. She doesn't talk about herself.
Yeah.
My Uncle Dom doesn't either. Very private people. You have to like pry information from them. Whereas, you know, some people are like, it's all about me. Like, I'm gonna tell everyone my life story. They're like the opposite, man. Like, I'm like their son and like nephew, and I'll find out like things that are like pretty big deal about both, and I'm like, they've never told me, you know. But I find it very intriguing about them both. But anyway, my mum had this like, my mum suffers from night terrors. She had this really bad night terror about 5 years ago, and then I think it was like, you know, my dad in passing said to me like, oh yeah, your mother scared the crap out of me the other night. Oh, she woke me up. I was like, fucking, I thought somebody was like breaking into the house or anything. She's like screaming at the top of her lungs. Anyway, like finally calmed her down enough to like talk. And she said that this like reptilian demon thing like came out from under the bed and started like crawling up onto the bed. And that's obviously like, but she swore down that it happened and that it wasn't a dream. So obviously me and my dad were like, obviously it was a dream. Like, calm down. Obviously it was a nightmare. But she was like, no, it happened. And then it's like, she told me, and it took me a couple of minutes, and then it was almost like, because I asked her exactly what it looked like, and then I got this really weird, chilling realization when she was explaining to me in more detail. I was like, she was explaining the thing that I saw in the dream when I was like 8, 9 years old. Whoa. And you know, like most of the time, I'm like a pretty calm person in terms of like, nothing really like shocks me. Like blood doesn't bother me, violence doesn't bother me. Like I can mentally handle a lot. But man, that sent a bit of a chill down my spine. Because it was like this moment of realization where I was like connecting the dots, and suddenly it made my nightmare feel a lot more real. Yeah. And obviously a lot more chilling. And obviously led credence a little bit to the fact that my mum was trying to say like, no, this wasn't like a normal nightmare. I felt like it actually happened. So yeah, that's pretty.
I do, yeah, because I get night terrors as well. Like I think we talked about it before, like your mum, and it is real. Like, I don't know, like sometimes you get things like that and you think, oh, that is a dream, that is real. But then dreams for me are really important as a psychic because I predict things through my dreams as well. So to me, dreams just aren't just some random thing you randomly get. It is stuff that's actually going on. So it's funny that you and your mum both connected to the same thing. So it was outside for you, but maybe your mum's more in tune, and so it was inside for her. So it's come closer.
That's crazy. That's not really like much of a blessing, isn't it? Like, yay for you, you're more in tune. Yeah. It's not just outside, it's on your bed. Or it's under the bed. Coming out
into just getting closer too.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, she said that like the moment
passing year, another step.
She said that the moment that she screamed and then my dad obviously like shot up, then it was like it like disappeared into thin air, but up until that point it was like crawling up the bed, like almost like towards her head.
And next it'll be your dad's face. It'll be your dad's face. Like,
yeah.
Get away with it. But
turn to your right.
It does happen. Yeah, it does happen.
So your mum was like still awake as she was screaming, but it was only when your dad woke up that
she swears down that it wasn't like a nightmare. Essentially, she says
that she was sitting up in bed, and when your dad woke up, she was sitting up in bed.
So to her, it was like, you know, you're in your room, lying down in bed, it's dark, and then you suddenly notice something, and then she realised this thing was crawling out from under the bed and then crawling onto the bed, almost like in this weird way, like almost like in a lizard.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it's a horror. It's horrific.
That is disgusting.
It's horrific. I guess, like, yeah. To my mum, it's like become like a normal part of her life because she gets night terrors quite often, like you.
So
But like my old, like Josh, my old man's always like, oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, Josh is like that. Josh actually has a go at me like, oh, did you have to do it? It's like,
like, excuse me, I got work in the morning.
Yeah, like, I woke him up the other night with that. Like, woke up and I felt someone over me, and he was just like, oh, for God's sake. But it's quite like, usually sometimes I'll just keep it a mental note in my head, and then I'll read someone like, that's for them,
right,
for that person. So it does tally up, and you'll speak about them like, have I got that right? And like, yeah, that's my dad. I'm like, yeah, he was just over my bed last night, like creeping around. Like,
in terms of like some of these entities looking like a little bit weird, so like just take that one for example, like a bit more of like a weird reptilian humanoid, like what the hell is that all about?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Sometimes it could just be a literal, your general bad spirit, but your subconscious is making it look like a demonic thing, or they're doing it to make him look more scary than they actually are.
So they're trying to feed off your fear.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of people say to me, I'll say to them, well, you've got spirits outside your house, which is fine, that's safe. So the dream you had, that's a safe dream. It's outside the door.
I didn't open the door or it didn't come in. So.
Yeah, so you're probably dreaming, well, it is outside, it's okay. But then afterwards, someone's obviously let it in. So then it's under your mum's bed.
You probably did a Ouija board in my house.
Yeah. So you probably had the dream to say, I'm here now, I'm inside your house. Ha ha ha.
I actually remember doing one in the porch of your house.
That's what I know. I do as well.
You let us do it in the house, so we did it in the porch.
Yeah, because I remember, it was my mum, I think, that wouldn't let you guys do it.
Yeah.
I think she'd say, like, you can do it in the porch with the door open.
Yeah, so that...
Maybe that wasn't... Yeah, because obviously my mum knows a lot about it. She's not quite on your level. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that was even a bad idea in itself, like doing it with the door open. I don't know.
Yeah, you should have everything shut. If you're doing a Ouija board, the best place is probably outside the middle of a field.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Not doing it in any property,
no
any
man's
sheds.
Land.
Yeah, no man's land, because you'll bring everything in with that.
Like an open space for it to just sort of fly away to. Like, yeah. But yeah, sorry, man. I know that you wanted to touch on a couple of stories.
Yeah, just funny ones really, or just like interesting things from like when we were talking about like the spiritualist church and stuff, because I used to go to that as well and have these experiences there and everything. And one of them, which I thought was interesting, was there was a medium that was up on stage, and you know she would just kind of come to whoever she thought, and came to me, and it was like. No one kind of like knew like me well enough there to know what my plans were or anything, or what was happening and stuff in my life. But we were just about to go on Czech tour, and there was obviously going to be like so much drinking and everything like that.
Yeah.
She just pointed at me and was like, "There's this old woman behind you. I think it's your grandmother or great grandmother." And she's got some milk, and she's just got this milk, and she's trying to like pour the milk, like she's trying to give you the milk, and she keeps saying, line your stomach, like for where you're going. Right. And I thought that was a really funny one, and it was like a little bit of just like, he was like, are you going somewhere? Are you doing something where you're going to be like doing a lot of drinking that? And it was literally that weekend we were going to like Czech tour, and I thought that was like quite a funny one. And the other one, my only like foray into mediumship at all. At the church, because you could basically, if you wanted to get more into it, you could like partake and do things as well. So went up on stage with Norman, and like, you know, he's saying, you know, just drop in, just look around the whole room, and just feel in your body, and then when you know you're on someone, you'll know you're on someone. And I couldn't do it, and he was like pointing. He's like, use your arm, just go around like the room like this with your arm, and I did, and I just pointed at this guy, and like I felt like a, you know, you think something in your head, and you're like, is that right or is it not? Yeah. And Norman was standing next to me, so he was way more tapped in, and like so I started seeing, I was like, yeah, I think it's like a woman. And he's like, yep. Yeah, you know, and he kind of was like, yeah, and then, or like, do you know what I mean? He kind of like he sensed that it was his mother basically, and he took and I just said like, I feel that just wants to like tell you something. I don't know what it is, but is with you, at like, you know, in this moment and stuff. And then he took over the reading really, and that was it. But it was just this thing of like me just pointing at this guy. And I didn't go for a month after that to the like church, and then I came back again, and Norman was like, I'm glad you're back. It was really beautiful that read you gave to that guy. He went home that night and he passed away. And he was like, his mum was actually coming to take him over. And I was like, what? Oh my God! Like my only ever thing in doing it, and that was the guy that I picked and stuff. And and he died that night.
You're the Grim Reaper, Drew.
I know.
You should have worn a black cloak. The little thing they look like that.
But yeah, it was weird. I didn't feel anything but I just thought it was crazy coincidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Just
Yeah, you get that
Grim Reaper
sometimes
Drew.
for people with readings where I'll do them and be like, I can't give you a reading. I just can't do it. Oh my God, it just doesn't feel right.
Really?
And then you know that something not right with them, or
Something
either ill
extreme.
or they'll pass. Or sometimes it can be for a family member. I've had that a few times. One woman would not let it go. She said, you didn't pick up that I'm having a grandchild. You didn't pick up I'm having a grandchild. And I thought, you're not going to have a grandchild.
Oh man.
You get that.
But that's awkward as well.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is awkward
Super
as heck.
awkward.
It's so cringy and awkward when you do it. Can Sam with yours, afterwards you're like, oh my God.
Yeah,
it's
scared me.
It's good that you get it right, but it's really bad that it's so negative. When it comes.
Does that almost make you feel a bit guilty?
But it's kind of spirit won't let you move on to the next thing until you kind of say it. So you just have to kind of be like, I'm just gonna have to do a reading just with the cards now. I just can't even just it's I just do it standard. You might have to sign a contract soon or whatever. Just do it really kind of boring. Or sometimes spirit will turn their backs.
Yeah.
So they turn their backs to you. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell are you up to? It just usually means they're hiding something, so they're not allowed to know something. Or again, it's because they're getting ready to collect someone. You just got to be kind of everything's fine, okay, bye. Afterwards, say, I don't like that. I had one a few weeks ago where all the spirits at their backs to this woman, all of them, and I thought, oh my God. But they seemed nice when they came in, and you get those vibes. And I've had that before where I've said things, and then later on, 2 members of the family passed away, and then stuff like that. It's can be really crazy, but it's so difficult. It's really, really difficult. Not all the time though. So
that is
you
nice.
come and see me, I won't.
Yeah, that's nice.
I'd be like, tell me everything. Don't hold back.
Oh, people are like that though as well. I've had
That's-
some people that come to me that have been really unwell, and they're like, look, I've not got that long. I want to know what I need to do, when it's going to be.
However bad it is, just lay it to me straight.
So usually obviously ultra professional, I'll say, right, it could be more around this time when it's going to be, and you need to sort this and this out. So you can get those types of things as well, but it's very rare that you do get it, but you can get it a couple times a year. Comes through. That's why I don't go to the spiritualist church and go on podiums, because everyone literally at the church will be crying their eyes out and then going, oh my God.
It would just be banished.
I always make people cry.
It's one of the things
if
I like
I
about
do
you.
any spiritual groups or anything like that, there's always someone that breaks down.
Yeah.
Even if I haven't said anything to them, they're just I just feel really
It's
emotional.
weird. I always feel
for
like
some
some
reason.
people like that, it's almost like they just really can't handle it. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I sometimes think as well my energy can exacerbate what's
Magnify
going
it.
on.
Yeah.
And you just get sometimes people just break down and cry for no reason at all.
Yeah.
And they'll just say, I just felt really doom and gloom, or just really really sad.
Yeah.
And I just go, oh.
Need a bit of a release sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. Just to finish up, because I'm conscious of the fact that we've been going for almost 4 hours, and I think this
4 hours.
I'm pretty sure you've overtaken.
Record.
I'm pretty sure you've overtaken Hen and Joe from Shoot the Moon as the longest ever Pandoras Box. But just to finish off, because it's just obviously I've always been really interested in cryptids, and obviously you're more in the otherworldly. Specialize in the otherworldly sort of side of the supernatural, the paranormal, but gotta ask you, what are your points of view on supposedly sort of things that are out of this world that are more physical? So obviously there's a long history in folklore all over the world of things like werewolves, vampires, things that go bump in the night, monsters. When you see in a lot of South American, and native and North American, native North American folklore, you hear about skinwalkers and wendigos and that,
Wendigo, that was
it. What are your thoughts on these sort of things? Do you have any experience on these sort of things? and just in general?
Well, I am not a believer in that.
Really?
Probably because I've seen too much already.
Right.
So the difference between stuff. A lot of things we see like that I usually do think are bad spiritual energy, that like your thing manifests itself into that face.
Right.
Or into that entity.
So you think you saw like a monster,
yeah,
what you
but
actually
it's
saw
not.
was
It's
a
a
spirit.
person. Yeah,
Right.
like I've had that before. Someone did a reading for my mum ages ago. Just this woman came through, but her face was like just like all disfigured, like it looked terrible,
nasty,
and it
man.
looked like a bit like lizard-like, but it was
right.
actually
Isn't that weird?
she
That's the
was making it like that, horrific. And that's like my belief with stuff like that. Like
So she was doing that deliberately to scare you?
yeah, so like to put the frighteners on. So that's what they do. Like it's a bit like putting on a costume for like Halloween. That's exactly what it is.
So you think that like it could be like, so the origin, say, of werewolves could be some spirit for some reason made themselves look more bestial, thought, right, I'm gonna give myself almost like a wolfy head.
Yeah,
and
that's what I believe in.
That's
Yeah.
something that they could sort of do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and like with vampires and stuff like that, they're kind of lustful and all the rest of it. You get spirits like that,
Right.
like that can be obsessed with women, and be following them all the time and trying to put them under a spell. So I think sometimes that can be where it
And
a
obviously
lot
there
of
still
comes
is that
from.
whole sort of like undead sort of pale thing
Yeah,
going on. So
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it does cross over a bit, I
Ghostly
guess.
figure.
But,
Yeah.
but I guess it's not something that you can sort of stake in the heart and like spell with garlic sort of thing.
Another thing as well with like the Native American thing and South America, that in the shamanism, a lot of they would like animism, so they would call upon the energy of the animal and would almost be able to like shapeshift into that animal, and like once they'd like connected with the spirit of that animal, they can like take that spirit upon themselves. And you hear about like in ayahuasca ceremonies and that like this they'll look like a jaguar, they'll turn into like a jaguar human, and they've just got the energy of the jaguar. And that could be
I think sort of South Americans and Native Americans, sort of native cultures, quite similar to sort of like Vikings. They were very almost like just simple and descriptive in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? So if you obviously had like, if they thought you had the strength of a bear, then they would that would reflect in your name. But that's also very true in like
called on the energy of the bear.
That's also true in like Native American. You see that in a lot of folklore. So it's almost just like it's very descriptive, isn't it? So
and all the artwork, the like 40,000 year old artwork, a lot of it is what's it called? I don't know what it's called, but when it's like half man, half like beast, and there's like all these drawings on the walls of just like kind of like humanistic.
Is it anthropomorphic?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Of like half animal, half humans, and some of the earliest cave art is that, which is crazy, pretty crazy.
Do you think that could be that then, Claire? Like almost like spirits invoking sort of like
like they do shape shift into different things. You definitely get that, like the change of the face. Like when people say, for instance, oh, I saw a robin, or I saw this, that's them coming. It's like no, they've shape shifted or they've sent it, and then they've gone back again. But yeah, it's all very complex, but yeah, not so much I would say in the physical. It's more spiritual how they're seeing it. Like a lot of people get these like sightings or epiphanies, like they've seen things. But it is, I always think, more spiritual, like as it's coming through.
Just to finish then, because just on the animal note, because I do think it's quite interesting, and I think it's interesting to do these exercises for people just for fun, apart from anything else. But like, I do feel like if you stare really intently at somebody for a long time, as long as the person's comfortable with you doing it, because obviously it's going to feel quite intense if you're the person. It's just like
you can see them more.
Yeah, I feel like you can maybe see an animal in them.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you know anything about that, or like if you believe in
Definitely
that,
if you're on acid
or what
as well.
you think's going on there. Do you think that's probably more just like your brain searching for something, or do you think there's something to that, like at all?
I think it can be your brain searching for something, but also people do have guides that are animals as well.
Interesting.
So if you look at some, you're probably seeing their guide, not
Right.
actually their like spiritual thing that they're connected. So yeah, like mine is a hyena.
Really?
That's coming through. That came through. Yeah.
A lot
that
of
I
people have
had.
told me that they thought I was like a wolf.
Yeah, so like if you went deeper, like you probably would find that you probably have got a wolf as your spirit animal.
I had a cow when I was in there. I had this like big cow face.
But
That my
they're
face turned
sacred
into.
though in Hindu religion.
Yeah,
They're very
true.
sacred, so that's good.
Guru Gobindro.
Oh, yeah. So you were a hyena. So what do you think that's all about?
The lady I went to see, and I like researched into it afterwards, she was kind of like, oh, it's just like it's taken on your like temper now and again. It's just very like protective and very like can be aggressive at times. I thought, yeah, that's true. Like very like fighty. But yeah, like behind the scenes, I would say more so. But yeah, I'd say that's like kind of my like, aggressive side that I've got to me and how I rush into things.
I can feel that in you.
Like, yeah,
I can feel like an inner fire in you.
Yeah, I've definitely got an inner fire there with that hyena thing. Like, you know, if someone said to me, "Oh, you've got a rabbit," or "You've got," and I'd be like,
I'll bite the head.
Josh is the rabbit.
Yeah.
Josh is the rabbit. You're the hyena.
Yeah, so I'm definitely the hyena. Yeah.
I want to do it now. I want to find out my inner animal.
Look in the mirror, man, and like really stare at yourself in the mirror, but like almost just like with your eyes kind of a bit glazed over, and you see your face changing.
I reckon yours is more bird.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon yours is more bird.
A chaffinch.
Yeah.
Oh,
A blue tit.
what a lame animal.
I feel like I was gonna say before you said that, I feel like Nathaniel very much like Josh would be a very like quaint little animal, like you know, like
Bullwinkle.
Whereas I think
yeah.
I think Jake's would be more like a Tasmanian devil or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like your brother Jake. Yeah. But anyway, right, we'll leave it there considering we're going on 4 hours. But thank you so much for coming on, Claire.
Baby.
Oh yeah.
So I appreciate you. You're a very interesting person.
Thank you.
Got a lot of love for your sister. And thanks to everyone for tuning in to Pandoras Box. We'll be back again next week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. We'll get you back on again sometime.
Oh yeah.
Cheers.